This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by Allison Cook, Lindsay Trebet, and Super Inframan. If you'd like to help support the show, you can do so at wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? And I just want to do this little introduction here, which I normally don't do. We normally go right into it. But this is a show on Kundalini. It's a lot about my experiences. This stuff is really hard for me to talk about. And I find even after all this time, you know, talking about more than for a few seconds becomes very hard for me. So this is a long show. It's about 2.5 hours long, and I'm with the Snake Brothers, who are fantastic. And at the end, we never gave out any of their info, but you can find them at brothersoftheserpent.com. Their podcast is fantastic. If you like them on here, you'll love them on there. So, yeah, go check them out. And if you have questions about any of this stuff, if you think you're experiencing any of this stuff and want to talk to me about it, please contact me. Contact at wheredidtheroadgo.com. And here we go with the show. Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have as my guests/interrogators, the Snake Brothers. Glad
to be here, as always.
And so the plan for tonight is I've been wanting to do another show on Kundalini. The first one I did, the main one I did, was back in maybe 2013 or 2014. And over the years, it's gotten a big response, but there's a lot more I can add to it. And, you know, I'm not good at just doing a show solo. I can't just sit here and talk about it. I need someone to interact with. And one night you guys were asking me a whole bunch of questions about it. And I thought, okay, you're the guys, you know?
Yeah, I remember that show. I actually listened to that. So Kyle and I have had quite a few jobs where, I don't know if I've said this before, but we've had quite a few jobs where we work way out in the middle of nowhere where there's no cell reception or anything. So we have to download anything we're going to listen to while we're on the job before we get out there.
Right.
And so I used to load up with Where Did the Road Go, you know, on the before I leave the house. And I remember listening to that Kundalini episode while out there. And, you know, and that was an interesting thing because it's an isolating job. And I'm out there Kyle's doing something somewhere else and I'm by myself in the middle of nowhere and I'm listening to this. And I almost know nothing about it. And it was just such a strange and interesting story that it's always stuck with me. That was a fantastic show. So I fully understand other people who want to hear more about it. So I can't wait to get into it.
The thing about that show is that was really hard for me to do because I'd never talked about it in public.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked about it with anyone close to me because, well, it's something they kind of need to know because it's going to affect them. Or people who had similar, you know, where I'd be like, I think they have awakened Kundalini energy here. Okay, you know, I'll carefully ask them some questions. But going in a public forum like that, I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to sound crazy, but whatever. And I've had so many people contact me over the years who have found that show and they're like, oh my God, this is what has been happening to me.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so that was a really good show. I'm glad I did that. But I feel like it needs some updating, too. There's a lot of high strangeness stuff that goes along with Kundalini. And then the origin of it, most people are probably familiar with it. If at all, they're familiar with Kundalini yoga.
Yeah, well, okay. So I know that most of your listeners probably know what high strangeness means, but can you give a quick rundown of what you're talking about with that?
Well, I'll get into it as we go, but high strangeness is just anything really above normal strange. You know, like seeing a UFO in the sky or a ghost in a house is not high strangeness. Seeing some kind of giant walk across your backyard would be high strangeness.
Okay.
That's not a Bigfoot.
Right.
So high strangeness is the stuff that's almost ridiculous when you look at it.
Or maybe a combination of stuff where you see one thing, like maybe you see a Bigfoot, but then there's like UFOs and also missing time and like lights in the sky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of times those encounters, I'm more keen on believing than the ones that sound like they are the typical encounters. Not that I disbelieve anything, right off the bat, unless there are major red flags.
Yeah.
But I think it's the high strangeness ones that are more interesting and tell us more about the phenomena, and also are less likely for someone to have made up. Because if you're going to make something up, you're going to make it up to be in line with things that are, that are more commonly understood.
Right.
Gray aliens appeared and took me into their ship, and they probed me and gave me an anal probe and blah, blah, blah. And, even though that's not the typical thing, to your average person, that sounds like the typical thing.
Right. Like boilerplate.
Yeah. Strieber's one of the few people that ever reported having an anal probe, but yet it's deep in the lore now.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
And so that's high strangeness. And Kundalini yoga is an Eastern practice, of course. Kundalini is considered an energy force that lies at the base of the spine, like just inside the tailbone. It exists in everyone, but in most people it's dormant. And so Kundalini yoga is the practice of slowly awakening that energy and raising it up your spine. And it moves through the 7 chakras from your spine to your crown, which exists just above the top of your head. So that's all well and good, and anyone can do that and have, beneficial effects from it. The problem is,
does it take a long time to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes a good deal of work to get it moving, and it's not generally on the same level as when it wakes up spontaneously. When it wakes up spontaneously, it's just like a hellstorm. And for someone like me, who is 13 years old when this happened, the word Kundalini didn't even exist in Western culture at the time, as far as I know. If it did, it was in some, obscure places here and there. So I had no idea what was happening to me. Initially I thought I was going crazy. And it was a really horrible experience. And the first time I came across a book on Kundalini, and it was like, oh, have you experienced these symptoms? And I'm looking at it going, yes. Oh my God, what is this?
Wow.
Immediately went to the library and started taking up books on Kundalini that were written by people into, the Eastern aspect of it. There's a good one by, I think it's John White, who did a compilation. So you get some of the positive experiences and some of the negative awakenings and things like that, all mixed together in that one book. Because it can kill you. That's the thing. If it wakes up and gets stuck, it can literally kill you. It can cause physical symptoms, physical diseases, if the energy gets stuck.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that. I mean, I knew it was powerful, but I did not know that it could actually kill you.
Yes.
Wow.
And there's a couple cases in that book. I want to say Ram Dass wrote about it. But it's been a long time since I wrote it. There was a big name Eastern author who wrote about it and how it made him very sick to the point of death early on in his life. He didn't die, obviously, but that's because he figured out what it was and got it under control.
And so are the symptoms things that would send you to the hospital and they would be confused and not know what's happening? Did that happen to you? Or, yeah, okay.
I didn't go to the hospital because it wasn't hospital level, but I had a lot of pain in my lower body, and I went to so many doctors and then psychologists because they thought I was faking it because there was nothing physically wrong with me.
Oh yeah, I think it's psychosomatic. Yeah,
right. And I was having problems with school at the time too, because I jumped from gifted and talented programs in elementary school to basically going backwards when I entered junior high because they had no equivalent programs. And I was generally about half a year younger than everyone else in my class. So they were kind of like, we don't want to push him ahead to another grade because he's going to be really out of place.
Yeah.
It's because I was doing 9th grade work in 6th grade. And then I went to 7th grade and did 7th grade work. And I was really bored. So I could pass any test they gave me, but I tended to skip class and stuff like that. And then when this got bad, I would stay home because I didn't know when it was going to kick in. And I was petrified of it kicking in the middle of a class or something.
Right.
The weird thing about it is it does seem to have some level of intelligence behind it. It may not be external intelligence, but it's like you're interacting with something intelligent. it doesn't tend to go off at inconvenient times, at least in my experience. Like, it goes off when it needs to, but it's like I never had it go off when I was in school. I don't think I ever had it go off when I was at work. You know, things like that. It goes off, you know. Okay, so inconvenient times it can go off is when I'm driving. That's happened a couple of times in the last few years, and I don't think it ever happened before. Coming back from a friend of mine's on New Year's, and I'm driving along, and suddenly the whole bottom of my spine feels like someone stabbed me with a knife and is twisting, and I'm like, oh, good, yeah, great, stop. You know, and a couple of times I had to just pull over and get out of the car and try and stretch my spine out, and I'm like, why are you doing this? This really freaking hurts, stop.
Yeah. But it didn't do it during the party. Like, it waited until you were...
Yeah, well, it's just me and him watching some wrestling.
Oh, okay.
But no, yeah, when I was at his house, there was nothing. I was halfway home, and suddenly it just hit me, and I'm like, okay, why? Okay. And I'm trying to, like... It helps if you could straighten out your spine. So I'm trying to straighten out my spine while driving. So I'm, like, leaning back and kind of stretching up, and I'm like, nope, I got to pull over. I got to stop because I can't do this.
So it's just pure pain? That's what you're feeling? And, and when this happened to you at first, you're saying if it gets stuck, you have to, and you're trying to, like, raise it up your spine. Did that happen when you were, what did you say, you were 9 or 13 or something like that?
Yeah, I think I was around 13. I didn't know what it was. I started out with hallucinations. I would see that the one everyone focuses on. I played trombone at the time, and I would see steam coming out of the end of the trombone. And I knew there was no steam coming out of the end of the trombone, but yet
maybe
I was seeing
you were just really kicking some butt on the trombone, just really smoking it, man.
and I'd say to my mom, I'd be like, "Hey, come in here," and I'd say, "I know this isn't real, but I'm seeing steam come out of the end of the trombone," and she'd give me a weird look. I'm like, "Just stay in here for a minute," and I play it with her there. Nothing. She'd walk out of the room. I'd start playing, and I'd see it again, and I'd be like, "What is this?" You know, like, again, I thought I was going crazy. I would hear a rattling. My mother had the recycling out on a porch near where my bedroom window was, and it sounded like something was getting into the recycling, like rattling around cans. And I wouldn't be able to sleep. It would happen when I was trying to go to sleep, and I'd call her and I'd be like, something's in the recycling. And one night she's like, there is no recycling. There's nothing out there. Yeah. And it would always stop when she came into the room. And I'm just thinking, am I going crazy? What is this? And why does it only happen when I'm sitting here by myself?
So I guess I want to understand if you still have occasionally, like, it goes off, as you say, and you feel that pain in your spine. Have you ever made it go all the way up the spine? Okay. Yeah. But then it'll start over? Like that lower pain in your spine that you said you've had in the past few years, it's happened or something?
Yeah, for some reason it gets stuck there, and I've never been able to figure out why, but other times it just shoots right up my spine.
Oh, okay.
So it decides, hey, I'm awake, and sometimes it gets stuck, and sometimes it gets stuck in other spots.
Wow. And I found it really interesting that you said it's almost like interacting with something that has some kind of intelligence. That's really interesting.
And that's part of the high strangeness aspect of
it.
You know, it's not just some random physiological thing. It seems to, what did someone say to me? It's going to do what it's going to do, and it doesn't really care what you have to say about it.
Yeah. But at the same time, it seems to have some kind of awareness of what is going on with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which so I would think connects it to your higher self in some way.
Right.
If it gets stuck and you have this pain in your spine, will it subside, or do you have to get it to go all the way up?
No, it'll subside.
Okay.
Like with the driving thing, like I kept getting back in the car, I'd drive a little bit till I couldn't stand it anymore, and I'd get out and I'd kind of walk around the car and stretch my spine and stuff. And finally I got back in the car and I started driving and it was just gone. And I was like, oh, hey, the pain's gone. Like,
yeah,
good. Please don't come back until I get home.
And so you said you had hallucinations. the steam is one that people focus on. That is a very interesting one. But what else? Like, did you see figures, people? No.
There's little things like that. I don't remember most of them at this point. The two I remember was the noise and the steam, and these are two common things that you will see with awakened Kundalini.
Okay.
Which, if you're doing Kundalini yoga and you get that, you're probably aware that this might happen. But when you're 13 and you have no concept of this type of stuff,
right,
and there's no one around you who can go, "Oh, I know what that is."
Yeah, that can be scary.
Like it with me, it tends to, the most common thing it tends to do is pulsate. My whole body will pulse. More often than not, it does it when I'm sleeping. And I've had people sleeping next to me who are like, yeah, your whole body just pulsates when you sleep. And sometimes it gets really, really strong to the point where it wakes me up. And I'll wake up just pulsing. And there's been a couple of times over the last few years where it was pulsing so fast, it felt like it would beat out a death metal drummer.
Wow.
Where it was just like, and I'm like, oh my God. And the first thing I think is that my heart,
Yeah.
And I take my pulse and my pulse is normal. And I'm like, nope. Okay, good. It's just energy. But obviously I'm not sleeping till it stops.
Yeah. And that's interesting because like, if it's not your heart, because that causes pulsing, but if it's not your heart, it's totally not related to it, then where's that energy coming from? I mean,
I think part of it is that we're made of energy.
Yeah.
Everything is energy, everything's information, everything's energy, but this is a very specific, like, enhanced energy sort of thing.
Right. I'm just wondering, we have this joke on our show. We talk about Kyle's beloved reductionist physicists, so sometimes we're looking at it in terms of that, like, where would this energy be coming from? But you're right. I guess we are all made of energy, and so the source may be.
But yeah, I was
higher self.
I was going down the same road. I was thinking like, okay, if it's not, is it in the nervous system and the whole? So like all the nerves in your body are activated and they're all synchronized or something.
That's a secondary effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and
because there has to be physical motion, right? There's some physical motion in the pulsing, so
especially if other people can feel it.
That's being caused by some.
They can feel it without touching me.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's actually energy being given off. I mean, it's electrical. It's definitely electrical on some level.
Yeah. And you've said that you mess with electronics sometimes.
Yeah. And I get shocks off the weirdest things sometimes. I picked up because of the pandemic, I'm not doing my radio show live. So I'm pre-recording it and then running it remotely. And so I turned it on the radio, and I don't get my station here very, very clearly. So I picked up the little wire antenna, and I touched the end of it, and it was like touching an outlet. Everything's just going, and I'm like, okay, don't want to blow up my receiver. What the hell was that?
Wow.
Because there shouldn't be any electricity going through that necessarily that you should be able to feel.
Right. Absolutely. I also think it's funny that you like run a computer repair business and you like.
I have to be very careful.
Right. Don't destroy people.
I've never blown up anyone's stuff. Like the thing that gets me the most is I can lean my arm on a computer case on a corner so that, like, say the back end and the top end, and I'll put my hand across it, like to lean, as I'm leaning on it, and I'll get a super shock off of it. Like if it feels like I am touching something plugged into an electrical outlet.
Wow.
And the computer's not plugged in. There's nothing there that should be giving me a shock in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see what you could do with an array of capacitors. Like you touch one side of a capacitor and then test it with
see if you charged it up.
Yeah.
But it would have to be when the energy is awake. Like it's not always there.
We'll ship you some capacitors. You can have them sitting around.
And it may be specific, there may be a specific rating for the capacitor that really works well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. And I think stuff like that has been done before. I mean, people have been able to affect electronics in a setting like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that we're kind of we're taking this into a more of a materialist view, but that's just part of how we think. But
that's fine.
I do understand that there's something, I don't know how you would put it, spiritual, something strange happening here. But it is interesting if you could actually just, turn it around and like straight up affect something that could be messed with in a laboratory. That would be very interesting.
Yeah. Well, it would also imply I could control it more than I do.
Right. Yeah.
Like I can calm it down, and sometimes, honestly, it takes a Xanax to calm it down. And I find that really interesting that a drug will actually calm the energy down.
Yeah. It's maybe changing something in your body chemistry that helps to dampen it or something.
Right. And I do, there's no research done on this stuff.
Right.
Again, Kundalini yoga is the main thing that you see out there. This type of stuff, it's almost impossible to find any data on uncontrolled awakenings.
Right.
But I keep being drawn to people who have it. That's the interesting thing.
Is there any information on why it spontaneously awakens in some people and not in everybody else? Like, no.
Trauma can do it, but trauma is such a component in everything that's even remotely paranormal.
Yes, that's right.
But especially physical blows to that area, like the lower spine and stuff. But that, how many people get hit in the lower spine or have problems with the lower spine that don't have this, So it could just be coincidence.
Yeah.
So I have a question also. Is there any, aside from the hallucinations of seeing the steam or whatever, are there any other visual aspects to it? And I guess I have this experience from time to time. It used to happen a lot more when I was younger, but it still will occasionally kick in just randomly. There's no pain involved in it at all. It's completely spatial and visual and it usually happens if I'm looking at someone. It rarely happens with objects other than looking at someone's face or looking at a person. But it's like suddenly it starts to look like they're really small or really far away. And then it starts to pulse where it's like as though you were looking through a camera and you had the zoom knob in your hand and you were just going in, out, in, out, in, out.
That's interesting.
And I can feel it too. It's like, it feels like a motion happening, a motion going forward and back, but it's much more pronounced than anything I could be doing. And it's even happened when I'm like laying down in bed before. So it does happen when I'm not looking at people, but the most often it happens is if I'm looking at someone's face.
I wonder if you're picking something up and that's how your brain is choosing to interpret what you're picking up.
It's really weird.
Like you're picking up energy from this person, and instead of showing you, say, an aura, your brain goes, "Oh, I'll do this," and interprets it as this weird back and forth motion. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
And I can't say when the last time it happened, but maybe a year or two.
That does sound like something that happens to me kind of when I have a fever, like a really strong one. Yeah, I don't know about the pulsing, but the stuff that seems really far away when I know it's not.
Yeah.
Or stuff that seems extremely large and close, but also incredibly far away at the same time. Yes,
I've had that sensation when I've had a fever, sort of hallucinating. But this is just, it can come on randomly, and if I like stop and focus on it, I can keep it happening, or if I shake it off. Yeah. I can kind of control it when it starts. I can't make it happen. It's weird.
So you're asking if Seriah has had any other visual?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's anything like that involved in it.
I've had a few weird visual things, but I don't know if they're connected to Kundalini. Like I've mentioned on the show before, there was one day I woke up and everything was tinted blue. Like I was looking through a blue filter. And I don't know if that was connected to Kundalini. It happened when I woke up one day, so I that wasn't what I was paying attention to. I was more freaking out that there was something wrong with my eyes.
Yeah.
And I got out of bed and I turned the lights on. I'm like, why is everything blue? What kind of eye thing can make everything blue, And I walked into the next room and everything just slowly it didn't even slowly, it quickly faded back to normal. And I went, okay, wait, now nothing's blue anymore. And I'm like, the hell was that? So could it have been Kundalini caused? Possibly. The thing is, this stuff integrates itself into everything.
Well, I would ask you, like, you've had quite a few strange and maybe paranormal experiences. Why wouldn't you think that maybe all of them are connected to this?
I do, generally.
Okay. Yeah. That's
I assume there's a connection anywhere.
Yeah.
When although I'm feeling much better now, for about 6 weeks, I was sick off and on. And I don't know if it was COVID. I'm actually going to go get tested for antibodies and find out. But I don't know what else would hold on for 6 weeks. The thing is, I don't tend to get sick. And the first time, I actually raised the Kundalini the first time I didn't feel good. I sat down and I meditated for an hour and focused on raising it. And felt fine for a few days after that. And then it kicked in again and took me out for a weekend. And at some point, one of the things that was happening is I was getting chills, but my upper back in particular was extremely cold. And I'm like, this is just weird. Why is my upper back cold? And one day I woke up and I could feel the energy pulsing on my upper back, and it was red hot. And I was like, okay, are you fixing this? Like, what's going on? And I was able to go back to sleep, and my upper back was never cold again. I'd still get chills, but that ice cold upper back sensation was gone after that happened. And I don't know if it was fixing it or maybe it was causing it in the first place.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's hard to tell if something is being repaired or if there was something wrong that's now being fixed. Yeah, that's
for me, breathing exercises can set it, like my whole body will start pulsing from it. Like that's all it really takes is for me to do some deep breathing and everything starts waking up.
Oh, wow. That's interesting because recently we worked with what's his name, Brandon Powell, who is very familiar with the Wim Hof method of breathing, and he does some breathing exercises. And we worked with him, and I did get some of that when we were doing these deep meditative breathing exercises with him. And they'd last 45 minutes or so. And you're right, there would be a pulsing sort of interesting sensation, and it would start at the spine and work its way up.
Right. And everyone has Kundalini, like I said, so it's just, for most people, it's dormant. But when you're doing something like that, you might have been waking a little bit of it up.
Wow.
The other thing, like when Kenneth Ring did his research on the Omega Project, where he was looking at the after effects of people who were abducted by UFOs and people who had near-death experiences, awakened Kundalini is one of the more common aspects between both of them. And I've also found that a lot of people who haven't awakened also have trauma earlier in their life.
Yeah. So what would the connection be there? Like, why do you think that would happen?
Well, there's something with trauma and all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, if you have trauma in your childhood, you're more likely to have paranormal experiences later in your life. And I don't know if it's just opening you up to something or what's going on. But it seems to also connect to that spontaneous Kundalini awakening. And I don't fit that pattern. I did not have trauma earlier in my life.
Right. The trauma was caused by the awakening, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I know someone who occasionally compares it to PTSD. Because it's just like it does this stuff to you and you can't really explain it to most people.
Right.
Because you don't know what it is. That's the thing. And it just sounds crazy. It sounds like you just have something wrong with you, not that you're dealing with an energy that people don't understand.
Right. And it brings an enormous amount of confusion and then you stress and confusion, and then suddenly you're like, what's going on? And then you don't know when it's going to happen again. And so that, I can see how that would be could cause PTSD like effects.
And stress can set it off too. So if I get really stressed, sometimes I can feel it start pulsing up my spine. And I'll be like, oh, this is what I need right now. Okay.
Yeah, this is helping. Thanks.
But as far as like the way it can affect people physically, I had met someone who had very severe bladder issues. And what they had was basically like their bladder was eating itself from the inside, like the lining on the inside. I forget what it was called, but she had the like worst version of it.
Wow. Yeah.
And was in constant pain. And a friend of mine said, I think she might have, awakened Kundalini. And I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll see. And I ran into her one day and immediately, like, she gives me a hug and I went, oh, yeah, okay. Because it was that strong. I could just feel it. And so I started talking to her and I said, do you want me to try and get your energy moving around a little bit and see, if it helps? 2 weeks later, she was out of pain.
Man.
It had been, I think she said 6 or 7 years since she felt pain-free.
Is this like something like what Reiki people can do? They can move the energy? Okay. Wow.
Because the thing is, like, I didn't believe that I could fix it. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I could try, but I don't really have a lot of hope here, until she said she went and had gotten acupuncture, and acupuncture made the pain go away for a week.
Oh, yeah.
And I went, okay, then it's energy,
Right, yeah.
And once her energy started moving, she was pain-free. It really didn't come back as far as I know.
Wow.
So it can cause, that was a real physical ailment, though. It's not like that was, she wasn't mimicking those symptoms.
Right.
It was actually causing that physical problem in her.
Yeah. And that would be, and you were able to just shift it? Can you?
Yeah, I just moved it through there.
Wow. Is there a way for you to explain how that?
You can feel it. Like when you connect with it, you can really feel it. And it connects to information. A lot of times why it's stuck is because you're not dealing with something. So when I deal with someone and I'm trying to get their energy moving, questions pop into my head and I'll be like, what's this? What's this? What's this? And I'll get them talking. And as they start talking about stuff, it's almost like following a trail.
Yeah.
And sometimes, it goes places they don't necessarily like going, but once they deal with it, the energy starts moving.
Okay, like a blockage in a flow or something like a.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it is very connected to like emotional blockages.
Yeah. Wow.
And the thing is, I dismissed all the chakra stuff for so long until I learned about this and realized, And I've dealt with so many people where I'm like, okay, your blockage is here, and it turns out to be something associated with that chakra, and I'm just like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have ignored all this. There's actually something to it.
And right, so I don't know a whole lot about this, but like each chakra has its own associations, right?
Right.
And energy types, and so you're able to tell, okay, it's this chakra because it's in this place and it has these associations, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I don't let people tell me where something hurts. I'll be like, okay, and I'll move up their spine and I'll be like, is it right here? And they'll be like, it's exactly there. I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah.
Because then I know I'm actually picking it up and I'm not just fooling myself.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dowsing.
It does sound like dowsing. Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
So I'm still kind of confused.
Works either.
I don't know anything about this, so I'm totally coming in here blind.
Good.
But, you're saying it causes you all these kind of problems, sort of, but at the same time, you can help somebody, like, heal their pain or something. But, so, I guess I'm just confused as to is it because it was spontaneously awoken in you that you have this thing where it just comes on and then you have to deal with this problem? Or is that with anybody that wakes it up? And so I guess my question is sort of multifaceted, but why would you wake it up if it's going to randomly cause you problems that you can't solve?
Well, you can solve them. And when you're using Kundalini yoga to wake it up, it's doing it at a very reduced rate. It's raising, and you have someone there working with you to kind of be like, okay, why do we think it's stuck? Basically like a psychologist type of thing. Mm-hmm. The spontaneous awakening, I wonder if it's connected to the same type of stuff that shamans go through. Mm. Like it so much of the stuff I've experienced connects to shamanic experience, and I just had no clue. Even being given a new name.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that is interesting, yeah.
I knew nothing about shamanism when all this stuff happened.
And I can see how a spontaneous Kundalini awakening with all the stuff you've talked about can result in like the wounded man images that they do for shaman awakenings.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Like all these spears stabbed through your back, right?
Right, exactly.
Wow. Huh.
So it's kind of like it becomes a tool. You have to work on it. You have to study it and practice with it in order to get control of it. And then once you can control it, then it becomes useful as a tool to help you and others.
Right, but it's always going to have... I mean, you're always going to have new things going on. You know what I mean? Like, no one is, like, fully enlightened and perfect and has no issues to deal with.
Yes.
Hey, hold on.
So it's always going to... Those issues just come to... Especially if they're important things you need to deal with, they're just forced to the forefront. You know, you can't ignore them because suddenly you have energy that's not letting it go.
Yeah.
You know, I had someone write me, and it really amused me that her take on it was very similar to mine. She didn't know what it was until she heard one of the shows I did on it. Because I've done a couple shows with other people, but I've only talked about my experiences primarily on the first one. But she was a very materialistic sort of view of the world, just like I was. And she's like, yeah, once this starts happening, you don't have a choice. It's not like it asks. It's affecting you, and you realize that this doesn't fit a materialist paradigm at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like getting swept away with the tidal wave. It's gonna do what it does, and you don't really get a say. You can either work with it or fight it, and if you fight it, you're just gonna be miserable.
Gotta roll with the punches.
That's right. Sink or swim. Yeah. I'm really stuck on this shaman thing. I can totally see how that would be. Because the old shaman would, of course, be fully aware of it. Just like you, he could feel it in other people, right? Mm-hmm. And so he would recognize this other child, this new child in the tribe who's got all these weird problems. And he'd go up and be like, "Oh yes, you're the next one," and then he would help him, right? That's really cool, man.
The sheer number of people that I've met that have had this, however, like either my reality connects me to an inordinately large number of people who have this, or there's a lot more people out there experiencing this, probably on subtler levels.
Yeah.
That they just don't know what it is, you know, or it's subtle enough where they can ignore it.
Right. But in a tribe of, say, 200 people, right?
Right. That's different.
Yeah. There'd be one person every generation or so, maybe. I mean, I don't know how many people but I'm sure that they're drawn to each other too, just like you said. So you meet an inordinate number of people this has happened to, but it's drawing you towards each other somehow.
And it, for some reason, I can only connect with female energy. There seems to be a binary component to it, like positive, negative. So I've never met I've met a couple of guys who had awakened Kundalini, but I have no energy connection to them.
Huh.
Is that the same for them? I mean, is that sort of normal, or?
As far as I can tell, yeah.
Yeah, that's even more interesting.
So it's definitely, like I said, it's a binary component to it that it sort of like you can't have the same frequency of energy. It has to be a compatible frequency of energy.
Right. Okay, so maybe in the tribal scenario, it's the wise woman who has to tell who the next male shaman is. Then, if it's going to go back and forth,
maybe.
Like that. Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, I can pick it up in other people. I just can't always interact with it.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
And sometimes I don't pick up anything. So it's, you know.
So can you feel like within somebody who doesn't have like awakened Kundalini? Can you feel energies in them anyway? Can you tell, or does it have to be with somebody who's having specifically this kind of problem? You know,
I can usually pick stuff up about people.
Okay.
Just as a general rule, and I take that, you know, some people would call that, that's psychic ability, but I feel like I'm picking up information that other people are also seeing, but they're not recognizing. You know, and not necessarily in the psychological way. I think that energy is information, and I have, you know, because of this, I have the ability to read that energy on other people and translate it.
And also to recognize that it's real information in some way.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Instead of blocking it out because where is this coming from?
Right. Yeah. I understand.
And then there are other people who I literally pick nothing up from.
Blank slates. Yeah.
Yes. It's like there's nothing there. And I'm like, is this like a frequency thing?
Yeah.
Are you even real? Frequencies are,
is that person even really there?
Are they really closed off? Are they, is it such a completely different frequency that I can't even recognize it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be that there's just no interaction. They're incompatible in some way.
Early on, there was this girl I started seeing, and my energy started making her sick. And I was like, oh, that's got to stop.
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry about that.
And I didn't realize what it was. It's just, she would go ice cold, start shaking, and I'm just like, what? And she's like, I don't know what's happening right now. And I'm like, okay, let's just not do anything and let that pass, And after a while, I'm like, it's my energy. That's what it is. It's affecting her in a negative way for some reason. She didn't have any awakened energy either, so.
Were you able to change anything, or did that just have to? You guys
that just had to stop.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I didn't know how to change anything.
Right.
I mean, this was. I don't even know if I knew what Kundalini was yet at that point.
Oh, okay.
I just knew I had. I knew I could blow. Lights and things like that on occasion. So I knew I had this electrosensitivity to things.
Yeah.
I couldn't wear watches, things like that. And I knew this energy was there. I just didn't know what it was.
So do you think, have we talked about this before? Sliders, the idea of.
Yeah. Yep.
You think that's Kundalini stuff? Maybe? Or liminal?
Sometimes. Because I've met people who are sliders who don't seem to have awakened Kundalini.
Right. It's happened to me quite a bit. Like I don't live in the city anymore, so I never see it, right? But when I did, I noticed it quite often, that lights would turn off as I was driving underneath them or whatever.
Right.
And I always thought that's really weird. You'd see it, the whole light would turn off, and then you would see it in the rearview mirror come back on after you'd left it, and you're just like,
yeah,
okay.
That's happened to me many times.
What is the deal? Why am I sliding past these lights? Yeah.
So generally, people who have had UFO abductions, near-death experience, etc., have awakened Kundalini. That stuff happens with. But there are people who have none of that stuff, and that stuff still happens with.
Yeah.
So it's something that seems to be set off by this stuff, but it can exist as an exclusive thing.
Okay. We're trying to make a list here of, it's not working. This is not, let's nail this down. Well, it's not working. We should have known.
Well, you can nail it down to energy.
Yes.
And it's some of the Eastern cultures, they basically term it like the evolutionary force in man. It's the thing that's supposed to raise you to the next level. If you can properly raise your Kundalini, using yoga, you're raising to the next level of energy.
Right. So how old is this idea? Do you know, or is it just go back?
I have no idea.
Myths of prehistory.
I don't have a clue. Let's look.
Okay. I remember reading something, and I can't remember where. So please, nobody ask me where I found this information. But it was a while ago, and I remember reading this. There was a sort of it was an informative thing talking about how they were purposefully attempting to awaken someone's Kundalini, and there was a kind of a long-winded description of how it was going. And at the time, I had no idea what I was reading, but I've never forgotten it. And then, of course, when I heard your show talking about it, I was like, oh, this is what they were talking about. But at the time I was like picturing some kind of snake in the person's back. I had no idea what they meant.
Yeah. It's viewed as a coiled serpent.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the actual term means hair of the beloved, if I'm not mistaken. But it says, according to Google, it's the practice of Kundalini yoga is about 5,000 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
It says, of the many yogas that developed over the past 5,000 years, Kundalini was considered the most sacred. The exact origin of Kundalini yoga is unknown, but the earliest known mention dates to the sacred Vedic collection of writings known as the Upanishads.
The Upanishads, yeah.
So,
okay, 5,000 years. That's old, and it probably is older than that if it's that old.
And underneath it says, "Why is Kundalini dangerous?" as one of the other drop downs, and they say, as with any electrical system, a power surge of Kundalini can damage the grid, causing grave mental and physical illness. While the channels through which Kundalini travels do roughly correlate with the nervous system, Kundalini is a subtle energy form that can't be measured like an ordinary nerve circulation is.
It's making me wonder if Tesla Nikola Tesla had awakened Kundalini because he had really strange physical deals with people where he wouldn't touch people. He was really awkward, socially, which kind of gave him a bad rap amongst, the people. But he also had very strange experiences when he was a child. There was trauma. He was very, very sick. And then he described at some point this situation that happened to him every night when he would go to sleep. He would start seeing these things passing by him, objects and things just going before him, marching along in his view. And then suddenly he would sort of enter into this world and walk in. And there was this whole other group of people, this whole entire other world that he lived in, awake every night while he was sleeping. And then he would come back and wake up in this world. And it's like, I don't know why it's just making me think of that. Just like the way you were talking about energy and, how all this crazy stuff he understood about electricity.
Yeah.
He built prototypes of things, having it all figured out before he ever built the first design. And then he'd just build it and it would work.
And he's so connected to the concept of electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he had all these just very strange sort of spiritual experiences all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Wow.
Unfortunately, he's not around for us to ask.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone had asked me if there was anyone in history, or if there's anyone dead or alive I could interview, and I'm thinking, John Keel would have been interesting. Tesla would have been damn interesting.
Tesla would be great. Yeah. If he would talk to you.
Right, exactly. Without, getting more info, because any of these things with it can manifest in people without all of them.
Yeah.
It can be little bits here and there. I met someone years ago who did have some trauma in her past, and very quickly I realized, you got some massive Kundalini stuff going on. And her energy reacted with mine very, very strongly, to the point where all I had to do is, I could touch the back of her neck and her whole spine would heat up.
Huh.
Which amused me, honestly. It's not normally, it's not something I would normally play with, but it got to the point where I knew it wasn't getting out of control. I had gotten it a little more balanced, but every once in a while I'd just touch the back of her neck and she'd be like, "Oh."
That's crazy.
And if I did it with other people around, people would just look at her like she was crazy. Like, what? She'd be like, "Nothing."
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Seriah. Appreciate that.
Exactly. But that's how sensitive it can be too,
Yeah. And that sounds like, the opposite of what we were talking about a minute ago, where now you have somebody where the resonance is so powerful as opposed to where there's almost nothing there. Yeah.
And again, I think a lot of it's frequency, and I don't know what creates that frequency, but that's the best thing I can compare it to.
Right. Whenever
two frequencies which are connecting properly.
Right. Now, whenever Kyle and I talk about frequency, we always wonder, what's the medium? That's the big question with frequencies is what's the medium through which it travels. And so you have this subtle electrical-like energy that is moving around in your body and causing physiological problems, but cannot be measured with the tools that we use to measure normal neurological electricity.
Right.
So what medium is this energy moving through? That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, something we don't know how to measure yet because we don't know it exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with there's these old sort of maps or whatever of the human body that they use for acupuncture. These strange lines that are connected.
Yeah, the
all
meridian
over the place.
maps or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, and medical scientists have looked at it and they're like, there's nothing there, right? And
except that it works.
Yeah, it works.
So obviously there's something there. They just can't measure it.
Exactly. That's really strange.
there was something else I was just going to mention about it too. It can also kick in massive, like, especially when it's uncontrolled, like it can kick in massive emotional responses. Like occasionally, like when I was first dealing with this, I would just get really angry for no reason. And it's not like, oh, I was a teenager, that just happens. Because that also happened, because you're a teenager.
Yeah.
But this was something really intense, or it'll hit you with like depression on such a level that you're just like, oh my God, like where did this come from? And there's nothing setting it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's no causal agent or whatever.
Yeah. There's an imbalance.
Yeah.
The other day I had, so I've learned something new about myself, and because I don't get sick, as I said, and so I didn't own a thermometer. And when this whole pandemic started out, and I started not feeling good, I'm like, oh, I should go get a thermometer. Except no one had thermometers, and even online it was saying, oh, we could have this delivered by the end of June. I'm like, what? And so finally, one of the local stores had one. It was like $60 for it, and I'm like, I don't want to pay $60 for a thermometer, but I probably should have one, and who knows when I'm going to be able to get a cheap one. So I bought the damn thermometer. And so normal body temperatures, I think 98.9 or 98.6, something like that.
98.6.
Mine varies between 96.8 and around 97.3.
You need to calibrate that thermometer.
Yeah.
It is calibrated.
All right, maybe you need to calibrate your body temperature.
I actually just read I didn't just read this, but a while back, maybe a couple of months, there was a news story about the human body temperature has been changing over time.
Is that what I read? That a lot of people have a lower than normal body temperature.
And I'm not sure if that's due to more accurate thermometers and more widely tested, people being more widely, a lot more data, in other words. Mm-hmm. But I don't think nowadays it's actually 98.6, but that's been
and it's diurnal. People's body temperature cool down when they're at rest at night or whatever. But I think that the main thing in that story was they were pointing out how most of the temperatures taken are on sick people. So, like measuring the temperatures of lots of people who have zero problems is not really happened much. And so the body temperature is probably something not averaged to 98.6, but something else. But anyway, sorry, we derailed your story.
That's right. No, but that's an important point.
Yeah.
So I don't know how unusual it is. However, I'm more comfortable like at 65 degrees, for instance, in the house.
Yes.
If it hits 70, I'm too hot.
Yep.
Like and above that, sometimes it'll actually make me start feeling sick over time. And so I'm checking it, I'm like, what's low? And at some point, I don't know, I had the heater on or something, and I'm like, I'm a little warm. Ooh, I should check my temperature. And my temperature was still like 97.3 or something. And I'm going, so I'm not actually, and then I'm thinking, do I like the lower temperatures because my body temperature is a little lower?
Yeah.
And so then to experiment with this, I sat down and I meditated and I did some deep breathing, which, awakened a little bit of a pulse of Kundalini. And then I checked my temperature and I was 100.
Whoa.
And I was like, so there's a significant effect, huh?
Yeah, that's...
Did you feel cooler?
No, I felt warm.
Okay. The environment around you felt warm when you heated up.
So when it feels, when Kundalini hits you with heat or cold, it's very hard to describe. It feels like it's coming from inside.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's like sometimes I will just randomly superheat. Like I'll just be sitting there and suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I'm hot. Okay. Cold happens occasionally, but nowhere near as often. Usually with me, it's hot.
Yeah.
So after doing that breathing exercise and stuff and feeling the energy pulse a little bit, I was like, okay, what is my body temperature now? But I'm not even feeling the outside body temperature because internally I felt hot. But not uncomfortable. If it was 100 degrees in the room, I'd be really uncomfortable, but I wasn't uncomfortable.
Right. Huh. I mean, yes, that is a measurable effect right there. I mean,
yes.
Something that can raise, the body temperature of the standard human body mass many degrees very quickly, that's a lot of energy. So there you go.
And there are people who suspect that it has something to do with spontaneous human combustion. I like Louis Proud's idea that it is generally a poltergeist phenomena. But that's a whole other, people can go listen to that show if they want to find out about that.
Yeah.
But poltergeist phenomena is also common in people who have awakened Kundalini.
Right. And with trauma and all the stuff you said, too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I just
all
want to
this
say,
stuff sort of interconnects.
Yeah. I just want to say, if anybody wants to get geeky, you can take that body. So you were a certain temperature beforehand. You meditated for 30 minutes. And then you're a certain temperature afterwards, and you could take your body mass and figure out exactly how much energy it would take to do that. And then you would know, like, wow, I just generated however many joules of energy over 30 minutes just by sitting down and meditating.
And it probably was prior to the 30-minute point. I did it to a binaural beat thing, which was 29 minutes.
I'm just saying it would be cool if you tried this experiment. Like, sit down and see if you can make it happen again. And do it in 10 minutes.
Oh, sure I can.
And then be like, okay, so here's my body mass. How much energy would it take to raise that amount of mass from this temperature to that temperature in 10 minutes? And then you have some serious data.
That's a great experiment.
True.
Do it now.
All right, we'll wait.
So I'm actually looking at the chapter for the book I'm working on that I wrote on Kundalini, because a lot of times when I talk about this, I don't remember everything. We didn't talk. I know last time I talked about this, I talked about the laughing phenomena, which is something where you just start laughing from this. Like, you feel a jolt of energy and it makes you laugh, but it's not funny. I don't know how better to describe it, because it's not like contagious laughter where you're laughing because someone else is laughing, because that's enjoyable. It's just your body just starts laughing.
Is it more like being tickled, sort of?
No.
It's not funny?
No, it's...
Okay.
There's nothing... There's no cause... There's no obvious reason you're laughing.
Right.
So you're not feeling like humor. You're not feeling good about laughing. You're just like, why am I laughing?
Yeah. That's what I mean about, being tickled. There's nothing funny happening. And a lot of times it's actually annoying, but you laugh anyways. It's that kind of response, sort of.
Sort of. Except without the stimulus.
Yes, right.
That sounds to me, very similar to just the pulsing. It's like a much higher amplitude pulsing. So your body is laughing.
Yeah,
maybe. But I've also been able to pass that to other people. So if I grab a hold of someone when that's happening, it starts happening to them.
Whoa. Okay, so is the laughing, what was it? Wasn't there like a weird laughing disease thing that happened in Europe at some point? There was similar to
laughing.
The dancing one. I don't
know.
Somebody with Kundalini laughing to other people, and they'd laugh until they were like.
It was dancing.
Dancing,
think,
yeah. There was one
dancing,
that was laughing.
yeah.
There was one with dancing, but there was a laughing one too, and it would make people hurt.
Huh.
Yeah.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
I know that on YouTube you can find videos of laughing churches. And what they are Christian churches who, when this happens to the preacher or whatever, it's exactly what Kundalini does. But they're in their mind they're channeling the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
It's just a different name, and they will grab the first member of the congregation who will start laughing, and they'll grab the next person, and it'll just go down the line like an electrical current.
Wow.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. That a lot of these different traditions are actually teaching about the same thing with different names and different methods to get there.
Yeah.
Yep. Same mountain, different paths to the top.
Yeah.
I can do it with yoga, bro.
Well, it has a lot to do with, like, any of the energy systems, especially the Eastern energy systems, that seem to have a lot in common. Like I said, when this girl said that acupuncture stopped the pain, immediately I was like, okay, then it's energy. Because if it wasn't an energy thing, the acupuncture shouldn't really have worked.
So what about damage from physical trauma? Can it be fixed? I mean, I know you talked about the bladder situation, but
that may have been being caused by it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like if somebody breaks their arm and they just have problems in it, or their back or their hips or whatever, is there any evidence or stories about people being able to completely heal?
Yes, but I don't know them offhand. I have heard that. I can tell you that I heal way faster than I should. Especially since I have type A diabetes or type 1 diabetes, which I've had since right before all this started, or right around the same time all this started. It may have also been responsible for it. Who knows? But diabetics generally have problems healing. You know, that's one of the problems, one of the things that causes diabetics problems as they move on through life. And I don't have any issue healing. I don't even scar.
Wow.
Like I heal up very, very quickly. I don't scar. I don't bruise. And there's been a couple of times in the last few years where I've like fallen or hit something so hard where I'm like, okay, that one's gonna bruise. Nope, no bruise. Okay.
Yeah, that does speak to fast internal healing.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like if I was diabetic without this, I might be dead by now.
So maybe this is, well, I'm just going to say, I don't know a whole lot about diabetes, but it's an imbalance between insulin and salt, right, in your body?
No. It's type 1 diabetes generally happens when you're young. Although occasionally older people get it, but you usually get it before puberty or by puberty. And what it is your body attacks the islet cells around your pancreas. So it's sort of an autoimmune attack. And those islet cells are what release insulin. So it destroys your body's ability to make insulin.
But what is the...
So type 2 by diabetes maybe is the imbalance.
Yeah, type 2 diabetes happens because your body stops processing the insulin properly. It's still making the insulin.
Okay.
But it stops. They're two completely different things.
Right.
Because I thought they were connected with sodium in some way. Like the insulin and the sodium are connected in some way. Well, maybe I'm wrong. I'll have to look it up.
I don't know a whole lot about the type 2. So that might be the case with type 2.
The reason I brought it up is because salt in a liquid is it's electrical. It's electrical. You know, when you change the salinity of a liquid, it changes its conductivity.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if I'm correct in thinking that this has something to do with the salinity in the body and the insulin, because what I remember learning was something like the insulin is a sort of response that sort of balances out the salt and the insulin salt balance or something like that in the body. So people that have diabetes have too much of one or not, not enough or something like that.
It's possible that one of the secondary, so along with making insulin doesn't only reduce blood sugar, but it balances some other stuff out. It's possible that's one of the things. I don't even think they know everything that it does. Because most of the complications of diabetes are things like it affects the capillaries, for instance.
Yeah.
Because blood pressure will raise in the capillaries, and that's what affects things like your kidneys and your eyes and stuff like that. Ironically, not totally different than what COVID is doing. One of the reasons kidneys are failing in people who have bad cases of COVID are because it's affecting the blood vessels. So it's not completely different than what diabetes does over a much longer stretch of time. Diabetics tend to have high blood pressure, so that might be connected there too.
Yeah. So you were thinking it was salt and it's sugar? Is that what you're thinking?
Maybe
it's sugar.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
Well, sugar is definitely the balance.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
But there are other metabolistic things that insulin does that if your body's not producing it, you're not supposed to be, like I said, you're not supposed to be able to heal as well. You have other complications because your body is not producing insulin naturally.
Right. So the upshot of what you're saying is that it's possible that your Kundalini, the automatic rising of it has saved your life, maybe.
Yeah, very possible. Because I didn't take very good care of my diabetes when I was younger. after the Kundalini stuff had started, I remember I started affecting electronics, and I affected the blood machines that I was checking my blood sugar on.
Yeah,
and so they kept and it kept registering as low blood sugar, and I kept eating sugar, and it kept registering as low, and I started not feeling good, and then ended up in the hospital.
Wow. And
I think I was still walking around. Like, I remember having like a Walkman, and I'm just walking around. I go get a diet soda and stuff, and I'm sitting down, and the doctor comes rushing out, and they rush me in, and I'm like, what's going on? And later I found out my blood sugar was like 800.
Oof.
Which is like the point where you die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And afterwards he's like, you shouldn't even be alive, and you were still walking around. And I'm like, sorry?
Okay, so it's the salt that causes higher blood pressure. So it's not a good thing to be taking in salt if you have problems with diabetes. But yeah, you're right. The balance is between the insulin and the blood sugar.
And the sugar.
Yes.
That's what I got confused.
It's definitely blood sugar.
Whoops.
And there have been times where I've stopped being diabetic for a day or so, which is not something that should happen.
Right.
This is where that high strangeness stuff comes in. Like, that's impossible. But yet there have been days where I haven't needed insulin for 2, sometimes 3 days. And the problem is I don't believe it. And I think that's what kills it. Like, I'm just like, no, there's something wrong. And then suddenly, oh, there it goes. Okay, now my blood sugar is behaving normally again.
Yeah. You got to buy it. You got to fully buy it. Totally believe it.
It's hard. It really is.
I can imagine.
It's not your conscious mind. It's your unconscious mind.
Yeah.
Like, because I have a very erratic life, I don't always notice, and it'll be like, I'll check my blood sugar. I'll be like, I think it feels okay. I'll check it. Yeah, it's okay. And then I'll go do stuff and whatever. And like, I'll check it again later and it's fine. I'm just like, okay. And then after a while, I'm like, when's the last time I had insulin? And I'll be like, I didn't. And then I'll keep checking it, and then it'll start, misbehaving, and I'll be going,
Yeah.
See, if I didn't notice, it would have been fine.
So have you ever set out to use it to fix something in yourself?
I've tried to fix the diabetes. Doesn't work.
Okay.
It's not something necessarily under my control. Like, I can't intentionally shock somebody. I can't spread it to someone. I can move someone else's energy, and my energy reacts to that. But I can't, other than like the meditation where I can get it activated, I can't control it.
Is there theoretically a path of some kind of practice that you could do where you would have control of it?
I would think. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure. I've never tried Kundalini yoga because, most of my life I was trying to, to repress it, not raise it.
Yeah.
But there may be some deeper, levels of that might help you control it. I don't know.
Would you want to do that? I mean, like maybe raising it would fix the spontaneous stuff and then you would have full control?
I don't know if you ever have full control.
Oh, okay. That's right. You're right. You're saying it's almost like an independent, intelligent entity.
Yeah. I mean, you might be able to utilize some of what it does. And I think I do that, like, when I first got sick and I sat down and meditated and raised it, that was to make me feel better. And I've done that before, and it's worked beautiful, It's like, oh, I feel really sick. I'm going to lay down. And when I'm laying down, if I feel it start to come up, I'll be like, okay, yes, do that and fix whatever's making me sick,
Yeah. Okay, another question. Is it possible that some cases possibly of what people thought were possessions may have been caused by this?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah? Okay.
It can also be mistaken for things like epilepsy.
Oh.
And again, there's this fine line between, is it causing epilepsy or is it not epilepsy? And I don't want to ever recommend somebody be like, oh, well, I'm going to stop taking my medications because maybe it's just Kundalini. Well, if it is Kundalini, it's causing that problem.
Yeah.
And you need to fix the Kundalini, and then the problem will subside.
Yeah.
But it's that Kundalini can mimic epilepsy.
That sounds right. I mean, it's, again,
it's electrical.
That's right. Yeah.
because it can make you twitch. It can cause people to just have like spasms that they can't control. So it behaves a lot like epilepsy.
Did you ever hear? So did you have auditory hallucinations? Aside from the rattling, yeah. Did you hear voices?
I occasionally hear voices, and there's this sort of gray area where is it Kundalini? Does it matter?
Yeah.
I mean, I hear voices semi-regularly, but they're usually very succinct.
Right. Clear.
It's clear, but it's only like one word. It's not like something's talking in sentences to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I'll be sitting in the back room and hear someone's voice say hello, and I'll be like, pretty sure there's no one in the house, but I'm gonna go take a look just to be sure.
Yeah. And that could just be the house. I mean, that's even harder to tell. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. So it's a very fuzzy area. So is that coming from Kundalini? Maybe. It can also create. If it hits the upper chakras, especially the crown chakra, it can produce things that come across like schizophrenia. But it can also cause schizophrenia.
And then we're talking about if it gets blocked there, that right? That's what you mean?
Well, or they can blow open with too much energy.
Ooh. Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
So it hits a chakra, it gets somewhat blocked, and then it blows open. It's weird to blow open at the crown chakra unless you just have a ton of energy hitting it.
Okay, so there's like like down at the base, there's a lot of energy, but as it works its way up, the energy is sort of becomes less.
Well, ideally, it should raise slowly. It should get to the top, and then it should move back down the other side of the spine.
Oh, okay.
So it's like turning on the water and raising it at like as hard as it'll go, and it just like breaks through the end of it rather than going back down.
It's supposed to cycle back down. Okay.
Yeah, too much pressure.
Didn't know that. I didn't know it was supposed to cycle back down. I thought it was a one-way street.
Nope, and I probably should have explained that. Yeah, the idea is to raise it up. There's two meridians along the spine. One's hot, one's cold. Again, you have that binary thing going on.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to go up one, get to the crown chakra, and then come down the other one.
Maybe that's why it's binary in the gender. Maybe that it's reversed in females, and that's why you can detect
maybe.
it. Yeah. Huh.
But I don't know. Like, okay, so if someone's gay, how
would
does
that change?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like how would that affect that sort of binary sort of thing?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I've never met anyone who was gay who had it, so I don't know,
Right.
And maybe it wouldn't change anything. Maybe it's just physical.
Right.
And that just like you would have to do a lot of research to figure out where those lines are.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a fascinating research topic, though. It does sound like a very interesting thing to research, especially because you have access to it within yourself. So come on, man, do it for science.
I more research whatever it's trying to tell me at any given time.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea what it was trying to tell me. Like I said, when I was driving, it's like, okay, why? Why are you?
Yeah.
Why now? Why we couldn't wait till I got home?
Yeah. Look, put us in charge. With 6 months, we'll put you in a lab. It'll be fine. We'll figure this out.
And people who have awakened Kundalini also tend to have poltergeist phenomena. They tend to have precognitive dreams, things like that. The common sounds people hear are flutes, drumming, flutes.
Flutes.
I've been hearing a flute recently.
Oh, well, there you go.
I forgot flute sounds because I'm again reading through the chapter of the book I'm writing. Yeah, there have been a number of times where I would lay down to go to bed and hear a single note from a flute, and I'd be like, "What is that?" So it sounds like a flute or drumming, like rattling or bees buzzing. And bees buzzing also, if I'm not mistaken, has connections to the UFO phenomena.
Yes, yeah.
Roaring or whooshing type sounds. That's what I had down in the book anyway.
Flute. I'm thinking of the pan flute,
Yeah.
Is that what it sounds like? Like a pan flute? Like a wooden reed or...
For that one note, it certainly could have been.
Yeah. You get the call of the wild.
Wrong time. I was going to sleep.
Do you do any camping? I mean, like that's
no.
Okay. You got to go out in the woods and see if you hear this stuff.
I've heard weird stuff in the woods too.
Yeah.
See, like, so because this is so prevalent to me, like, I assume anything weird that happens to me is somehow connected to it.
Okay.
You know, like, I don't, again, as I said, poltergeist stuff is, people who have awakened Kundalini have poltergeist stuff happen. And that's energy affecting the environment.
Right. But, I mean, like, that some of the poltergeist, like the stones falling or pennies appearing or whatever, like that. If that's
apports.
What?
That's apports. Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be Kundalini.
I mean, wow. That's because I've always found that to be fascinating right there. Like stuff appearing kind of out of nowhere and it's warm to the touch, right? Sort of like what you're talking about. Stuff is heated up by this energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would say with a lot of okay, so you can have stuff like that without Kundalini involved. I think Kundalini like supercharges it.
Okay.
I think you can have someone who's experiencing poltergeist phenomena who does not have Kundalini, but I think when you have Kundalini, it charges that up.
Yeah. Wow.
I also get weird, like, medical things. Like, as much as it seems to help me heal and stuff, every once in a while I'll have some weird ass thing go on where I'll be like, what is this? And finally I'll go to the doctor and they'll be like, there's nothing wrong with you. I've never seen this before. And I'll be like, great, thanks.
Where'd this penny come from?
So I guess we'll call it, yeah. I guess we'll call it stress then and just not worry about it.
Yeah. Have you had missing time before?
I am so bad with time, I don't think I'd notice.
Okay. Fair enough. That's a good answer.
Not that I'm aware of.
You're like, yes, every day, right? That's
yeah. Fair enough. I have it a lot when I'm trying to sleep, and then suddenly it's an hour later, and I'm like, I slept?
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. Why am I awake now then?
Right. How is there no in between? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or the, oh, okay, you know what? I'm gonna snooze for another hour, and you click it, and then you literally lean back, and it goes off again. It's like, what the hell? Did I say a minute?
Yeah.
Oh, it's an hour later. Great.
Right.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't even realize I laid all the way back down.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, we're talking about the apportations, and I'm thinking of there are weird stories of people disappearing from where they are and appearing somewhere else far away. I wonder if that would be obviously and it's hard to tell if those stories are real, but just for the sake of the discussion, that could be Kundalini related. You just teleport somewhere, like, wow.
Well, and again, I think some of that stuff just happens, and
right.
If someone happens to have Kundalini, it might charge it.
Yeah, or cause them to walk into the place where it would happen or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Kundalini is almost like supercharging everything. So you're having, any of these experiences, like the electrical interference and stuff can happen without it, but when you have it, it kind of like amps it up.
Yeah.
You put a bigger power supply in.
Right.
It can when I work with people's energy, anytime you mess around with the crown chakra at the top, and you don't. A lot of times I don't even actually have to touch someone, and that's what makes it so interesting to me. I could put my hand just above the top of their head and just kind of move it in a clockwise motion. And after a few moments, they'll be like, whoa, I feel really spaced out. It's like, okay, all right, good. You're getting energy up there then.
Yeah. Huh. Have you tried dowsing before?
No.
Okay. Sorry, I know we got all these questions coming out of left field, but
yeah, no, that's fine. That's what I want.
You should try it. I think maybe you would be really good at it.
I might be.
Yeah.
Or I might overthink it and suck at it.
Well, yeah.
That would be what I would be worried about. I'd be thinking, this doesn't work. No. Was that me? Did I just move them?
Right. You have to do it in a testable environment. Yeah. I've tried to come up with ways where I can test dowsing. So, but yeah.
Premonitions seem to be a common thing. Like, I have had so many precognitive dreams, it's ridiculous. Some of them are minor. Most of them are not. And they're never... Like, I realize the difference between when most people tell me their precognitive dreams and mine. A lot of times when someone has a precognitive dream, they're dreaming about what's going to happen. Like they're having a dream about the thing.
Yeah.
Or as whatchamacallit, who wrote Time Loops, showed, people, like for big disasters, people will be dreaming about seeing the media coverage of it.
Yep.
With mine, I'm literally given information. So I'm not dreaming about what's going to happen per se. I'm literally just given information points in a dream format. And it won't resemble anything like the dream, but I'll have those information points down, and some of them are very, very detailed. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, there's that one and that one. Well, what's that one mean? Oh, there it is. Okay. You know,
like, how does that look in the dream? Like there's somebody is telling you the stuff or
sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes. There have been a couple times in the last couple of years where I would meet someone in the dream and I'd go, oh, okay. So this person's standing out in the dream. This is someone I'm actually going to meet, and they're somehow important. And then I'll be given their name. And there have been 2 cases now where it wasn't their name, but that name meant something to them.
Oh.
So to me, that's almost more significant than the fact that if I had just been given their name,
right,
because this was something more esoteric to them.
Right.
So when I say, does this name mean anything? And they go, oh,
yeah.
It's like, yes, that name does mean something. It's like, okay, now this makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So dream questions. Do you usually remember your dreams?
A lot of times. Yeah. I mean, I dream a lot.
Okay. Because a lot of people think they don't, right? And
everyone dreams.
Right.
It's just a matter of, it's an altered state of consciousness.
It's about, do you remember it or not? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And sometimes I will, this happens every once in a while. Like, actually, one of my Kundalini experiences happened recently with this, where I suddenly felt awful. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and I was like, oh my God, I need to lay down. Like, I feel terrible all of a sudden. And I laid down and immediately fell asleep and immediately entered this somewhat dream state where I was shown, like it actually was mildly terrifying in a cosmic horror sort of sense, because it was kind of like showing me the universe and how big it was.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, it's like I couldn't wrap my brain around what it was showing me. And then suddenly my energy started pulsing, like extremely strongly. And I'm still in the dream, but I'm also aware that this is actually, my energy is actually pulsing. It's not like I'm not dreaming it's happening. It's actually doing it. And the things in the room around me started appearing and disappearing.
Huh.
And I was like, I don't know what this is. This is kind of interesting. And then I'm like, is this trying to tell me that reality is not real? Like, what is the message here? And then I woke up and like, I felt like I was lifting off the bed with each pulse. It was so strong. And I was like, okay, all right, feel better now. What was that? And why did I need to lay down for that right then and there?
It was giving you a sense of perspective.
I guess.
Here's how big everything is, but you're still awesome because you can make stuff disappear.
But or maybe none of it's real.
Yeah, none of it's real. It's all an illusion.
So I wonder if
exactly.
Sleep paralysis is a sort of Kundalini awakening during sleep. It's like because there's that buzzing, there's the weird pulsating going on with sleep paralysis, and then it's sort of like everything that you just described, but
what's interesting too is that sleep paralysis can be catching.
What does that mean?
It's contagious.
So,
contagious.
Yeah. Like someone who doesn't have sleep paralysis, if they start sleeping next to someone who does, sometimes they also start having sleep paralysis.
And that's very Kundalini as well, right? You're passing it on.
That is very Kundalini-ish. I don't know if I've made that connection or not before.
So early on, when in this discussion, I was thinking about you as being a child and this thing just waking up in you, and it was. We were talking about how it's intelligent or something like that. And, I was, we've been talking a lot about the physics of it, but going back to the spirit side of it, I have this idea. I don't know if it's true, but it's cool to think about that. We are like our minds are connected to the body, but they're a much more vast being that knows a bunch of stuff in another realm, the other spirit realm or whatever. And then when we come into the physical realm, I imagine like as a child or a baby, they don't know how to deal with the physical world. They're gaining all of their senses and learning how to make sense of everything in the physical world, but perhaps their mind still remembers everything that was going on before in the spirit realm, all the knowledge
in the past lives,
and all of that kind of stuff. And then as you get more and more into the body and into that physical world, we start to lose that memory. And this is maybe why children seem to have, we think of it as like, oh, their imaginations are just crazy, but they actually can sort of, interact with that world still a little bit, but they slowly forget it over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why they have imaginary friends.
Yes.
Things like that.
Yes. Because they're still much more highly closer to that other world than we are as adults, as older people who have forgotten so much,
I don't even know if it's forgetting. I think it's culture. Our culture has determined that stuff isn't real, so that's what we teach them, and eventually they start ignoring it.
Right, and I've thought about that too. We can train it out of them, but maybe perhaps there is also just a natural sort of you just get sucked into this world and all the senses and all of the everything that's going on.
Right, right, yeah.
So my thought was, what is your earliest memory? Do you have vivid memories of early childhood? Because a lot of people don't. They don't remember anything from until they're 5 years old or later than that.
I have barely any memories of childhood. I have a couple from before I was given the name Seriah. When I was given the name Seriah, right before that, and it's funny because now it's May 15th where I am, and this happened on May 15th. I had this huge Kundalini burst. I thought I was going to die. Like, it literally felt like I was dying. And all of a sudden, all this stuff from my past that I didn't understand suddenly made perfect sense. And I just started writing, writing all this stuff down. I'm like, oh my God, how did I not see this before? And what about this? And how did I not see this before? And I was afraid I was going to forget it if I didn't write it all down. And I wrote pages and pages of stuff. And then I felt different afterwards. And what I realized going on is that the stuff that happened before that, as time has gone on, I don't really remember much of. Like, I have one or two memories here or there. I know there's a couple of false memories in there. False in the sense that, like, my mother would describe something that happened and I visualized it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, I remember this. And then I realized, no, I don't remember this because I'm actually seeing myself in the memory. I'm remembering her telling me about it. So, yeah, my memories from prior to that event, it's almost like it Swiss cheesed them.
Huh. That's like a rebirth or something. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I took it. I didn't know exactly what that meant. And then, shortly after that, I was given the name Seriah, and I went, I'm not using that name. And once I started using it, poof, everything started changing. And, I was into the occult at the time, so I took the name apart in different ways, and the name Seriah Azkath literally is binary. And if you put them on the tree of life, for instance, in the Kabbalah, one falls on one side, the other falls on the other side. Everything I did about it showed me that they were literally opposites. These two names were literally opposites to one another. Recently, Ren had someone do the birth chart of someone who would have been born on May 15th that year, and so on and so forth, and it pretty much described me to a T. Using the name Seriah.
So it's as though, like, the spirit or something switched, like took its place with a new one almost.
Yeah, or woke something up that was dormant inside me.
Yeah.
Like I noticed like my handwriting changed. It didn't change completely, but there is a distinct change in my handwriting from before that event to after that event.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this is the high strangeness stuff. Some of the high strangeness stuff I can't even talk about. That I don't like. I can't even wrap my brain around at this point. But it's definitely a synchronicity engine. Like it'll throw synchronicities at you right and left when it's active. Which implies, I mean, again, it comes down to what are synchronicities? Are we manipulating our reality? When we get synchronicities, is something else manipulating our reality?
Yeah. Do you think you just notice them more when it's active, or event?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was telling you guys before we went on the air. I was listening. I had to run up to UPS store in Geneva today because I needed to return my phone, whose camera stopped working. And luckily, it was under warranty, so they sent me one. I just had to pack it up and send it back. And I was listening to the Magnus Archive, which is an awesome podcast.
Excellent podcast.
Yeah. It's just for anyone who's interested. It is fiction. It starts off like a bunch of disconnected paranormal stories, but then builds into this really good theme, really original and really well done.
Yeah. Statement begins.
Yeah. And so as I start an episode, I'm almost at the UPS store, and in the episode, he says something like, I was working with this guy, Samson, and I look to my left, and there's a sign that says Samson class. At the exact same moment, and I went, really?
Yeah.
The hell's a Samson class? And then I pulled it to the thing, and when I went to leave the UPS store, I looked again, I'm like, that does say Samson, right? Yeah, it says Samson. Samson class.
Samson.
So what are the chances that he would have said Samson at the same moment that I see the sign that says Samson class?
Right. That seems like it would take planning to have that work that way, right? That's the crazy thing about synchronicities is like you start thinking of how could you make this happen, and you would have to be a timing and planning master.
Who is doing this?
Right.
and that happens to me somewhat frequently. Like a word will be said, and at the same moment, I'm looking at that word somewhere, and it'll be an unusual word, like Samson. How often do you hear the word Samson? You know,
half baked. Samson.
Or I'll be on a show like this, and I'll be talking about something, and then somebody will message me on Facebook about the very same thing.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, really? Okay.
Right. Yeah,
and it would be something like, oh yeah, so it was weird because I was talking about this thing, and then it popped up in an ad on the side of my screen, and then someone will write me and be like, so I just talking to someone about this thing, and an ad popped up to the side of my screen. I'll be like, really?
Yeah, those are pretty strong synchronicities right there. When it's
I don't know if they mean anything.
Well.
Other than, agreement from the universe, you're in the right place, you're supposed to be here. I don't know.
You're on the path. Yeah. That's how I look at them. I mean, of course, you're right. We don't have any idea, but I look at synchronicities as like they're signposts on the path. Like this is where you're supposed to be. You're doing something right.
And I'm not someone who accepts everything as a synchronicity. Like it has to be something pretty like I said, like the Samson thing.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what a Samson class is. That's the best part of this. And I don't even remember what it was, like a construction store or something, or like where they do construction. Where they do construction. That's good. So I'm just like, what the hell is a Samson class? It's not like I don't know. They said Zumba, and I looked at it said Zumba class, where that's a sign you expect to see.
What?
I've never seen that sign.
I don't know what you're talking about. What Zumba class?
Zumba? I don't know. They were like workout things.
Oh, okay. Because you're like, yeah, you expect to see that sign. Kyle and I are like, no, we don't.
I have no idea what you're talking
about. Maybe if you look at it, ZOOMBA. I don't actually know exactly what they are.
Yeah, but I see what you're saying. Like yoga, you would expect to see yoga class or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And especially if it was someplace that looked like it hosted yoga class.
Right.
So not knowing what it is and also happening to hear that weird name not that Simpson's a really weird name, but it's definitely not a common name.
Right.
So that stood out to me as, oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I'm supposed to be here.
Right. I mean, at the very least, synchronicities wake you up to, briefly to you're like, wow, the universe is weird, right? I mean, that's the first thing that happens to me when they happen. You're just like, there's this interesting, it puts you in this frame of mind. You're like, what is really happening? I think that may be one of the most important things about them. Like, you could take somebody who has no interest in any of this paranormal stuff, and if you throw enough synchronicities at them, they will start looking into what's going on.
Right. I would think so, although some people will just keep ignoring it. And that's the thing. Once you start paying attention,
it happens more.
It happens more, or is it just that you're noticing more?
Right. I mean,
we have no way of going back and redoing. You know what I mean? Like, if we could do that, we would know if we had free will. We would know synchronicities mean anything, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, save the game here. Now go back one day.
Yes. Try that again.
So someone I was talking to about this, I want to just quote their message to me because I think it was perfect. And they said, the Kundalini flares, as I think of them now, kind of ebb and flow with no real concern for anything else that's going on.
Okay. So
it had quieted down a bit, but then I started almost unknowingly pushing it off to the back burner again. It didn't take to that and flared right back up again a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
The energy is going to do what needs to be done, whether I'm ready for it or not.
Yeah. Do you know if there's any correlation to like astronomical cycles?
No, I have no idea.
Okay. Because that would be an interesting thing. Like, does it happen when planets are in conjunction or something?
Or when solar activity is higher?
Yeah, or the moon is somewhere, or Yeah,
I've never noticed anything.
Okay.
Well,
but again, even when I have had some of my really weird experiences, I didn't necessarily notice anything going on Kundalini wise, but it doesn't mean it wasn't affecting things.
Right. Yeah.
It's always there. And as far as it being like another intelligence, like, I literally kind of address it as if it's a separate intelligence to me. And I don't necessarily think it is, but it's kind of like poltergeist phenomena. When something happens, I'm obviously not controlling it. It'd be great if I could, but I've tried and I can't. I can't spontaneously create poltergeist phenomena. It just happens.
Yeah.
But sometimes just talking to it and saying, stop, stop. This is annoying. Stop doing that. And it'll stop. But I have to address it like it's something outside of me, even though I suspect it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it is. Maybe the poltergeist activity I'm experiencing is another entity. I don't know. But I treat the Kundalini kind of the same way because I'm not in control of it.
Right. Would you be averse to keeping a calendar?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We're trying to get you to do some science.
Yeah.
Keep a calendar of what?
Well, every time the Kundalini flares up, after it's over or whatever, just go and put an entry into the calendar, like just say Kundalini.
I have notes when it flares up bad.
So the dates and the time and all that stuff. Because then with those dates and times, you could go back and look at what was going on
astronomically and see if there's any correlation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That'd be a lot of different stuff to look at.
Right. I mean, maybe if something stands out, is there a pattern, first of all?
Yeah, well, that's part of the reason I started keeping notes was to find out if there was a pattern in this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was told to.
Right.
And at that point I was just kind of like, I still didn't know what was telling me to do things, but I was like, I'm just going to do what it says.
What told you to do it?
I don't know. That's the thing.
Oh, okay. So you were that's what you meant. I was told to do this. Okay.
Well, look, I get information two ways. I get information from dreams, and I get information that just appears in my head. And it's easy enough to throw that out and say, well, it was a random thought, except that information sometimes is completely impractical. Like, I think I've told the story on here. I had a co-host on the last exit, and you can almost say it's psychic to some degree, I guess, but it often doesn't feel like it comes from me. So I had this co-host, and he was going to Cornell, and he was going to leave. He didn't want to, but the project he was working on, he was a postgrad there, was moving to like Wisconsin or something. And so he's like, oh, they're moving me to Wisconsin. I can't do anything about it because I signed a contract, et cetera, et cetera. And he wasn't happy about leaving. So he tells me this, and I looked at him, and I knew immediately he wasn't leaving. And I went, you're not going anywhere. and he's like, I am. And I'm like, you're not. And he's like, yes, I am. And he was actually getting pretty upset with me over the next few weeks because nothing was changing. He was still leaving. And every time he said it, I'm like, dude, you're not going anywhere. And the last week, that it was supposed to be his last week on the show, everything was set up in Wisconsin. The week before, he's telling me there's nothing that could possibly stop this. He walks in and he just yells at me, how the F did you know?
Oh, well, at least he didn't blame it on you. Right.
And I turned, he didn't want to leave. And so I turned around and I looked at him completely puzzled, and I'm like, no, what? He's like, I'm not leaving. And I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, I told you.
Yeah, that's totally obvious, guy.
but it wasn't, it was like the information was just there in my head. It wasn't like, I don't know how to explain it. It's not like I read him in any way.
Yeah.
Like as soon as he said it, like information in my head said, no, he's not.
Right.
And I was like, okay, no, you're not.
Yeah. That's like that capital K knowing, right? It's just, it happens. And
or I'll be told to look for something that seems completely ridiculous to me, where I'm just like, it'll be like, oh, you need to suddenly I'll realize I need to find someone who has this really obscure necklace that I own. And then I did it completely randomly. And it's just one of those things where I couldn't possibly have just come up with that, because there's no reason anyone else should have had this necklace. And this was back in the MySpace days, where I was just like, there was someone's profile that popped up. There was no picture of them. There was no information. I'm like, I need to talk to this person. And I clicked on it. And there was almost nothing on the profile. And I just wrote them and said, hey, I feel like I should talk to you. And they wrote me back, and I'm talking to them for like an hour, and I'm like, I don't know why I should have talked to this person. And then they said something about a necklace, and I said, what's your necklace? And they described the necklace I had. I'm like, there it is. All right.
That's crazy.
That is really strange. Yeah. And can you tell if there was some reason for that, or was it the activity itself? Like, did anything come out of that, or?
Sort of. I mean, we became casual friends. There were a couple times I talked to them when they needed someone to talk to, so maybe that was it. It wasn't anything major.
Right. Except that it happened, and now you have that in your experience, and you're like, okay.
Right. So this was entirely impractical. There's no reason anyone else should have had this, especially someone I randomly looked at on Facebook. And it wasn't like I randomly looked at their profile or they had an interesting profile picture. It was just, I need to click on this one.
That's sort of like you're just following that impulse, that first impulse.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. And after an hour of a fairly boring conversation, I was just like, I don't know why I was supposed to talk to this person.
Yeah. I mean, man, that's powerful dowsing right there. Where are you going to find a necklace?
And once the necklace thing came out, then she started talking about the more esoteric parts of her life, because that's what it connected to. And I was like, okay, now we can have a conversation.
Yeah. Wow.
That's cool.
But there was nothing there to indicate that stuff was there.
Right. All right, real briefly, I want to go back to the astronomical thing.
Okay.
You have May 15th.
Right.
That's an astronomical alignment, basically. Yeah. That is a particular place. The Earth is in relationship to the sun once every year. So that's kind of a clue that there is possibly an astronomical pattern to some of these other things. So maybe you should check it out.
I had a dream prior to that event where I didn't know any astronomical symbols. And because I've just never really looked at astrology. Even to this day, I've never looked that deeply into astrology. But in part of the dream, the symbol for Taurus was slid out. It was in the dirt, but somehow the dirt was slid out from underneath this doorway. And I knew that symbol was important. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, because it just had the circle with the half circle on top of it. And I'm like, yeah, all right. And so I wrote it down, and then I started looking around for symbols. And this is pre-internet, so I couldn't just, Google it. And finally I found out it was the Taurus symbol. And of course, May 15th falls in Taurus.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh.
There are astronomical alignments happening here then.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
I mean, it's near the end of Taurus, if I remember right, but it's still in Taurus. And I was like, well, when I went back and read that, I went, oh yeah, Taurus, and then the May 15th thing. All right.
All right.
And as I told you guys before this, something I only found out recently as I was going through my mom's paperwork, trying to decide what to throw out, what to keep. One of the things I found was the paperwork for when they bought the house I live in.
Yeah.
And that was back in 1985, and I picked it up and I went, oh, I should probably keep that. And then I noticed that they bought the house on May 15th.
Yeah.
And I suddenly went, wait, does this go backwards as well as forwards? Like, I have no records backwards. I started recording the December before all this happened, so I don't have anything prior, and I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
So having that piece of paperwork was suddenly like, whoa, seriously?
Pattern's been going on for a long time.
That's right.
But yeah. So this is sort of the high strangeness level of it. Like, it gets to the point where I can't explain it. Like, there's no rational explanation for it. It sounds nuts.
But
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and I think it's cool.
It's we don't think you sound nuts, but it is very strange. But it also gives you these hints of, like you said, that there's something intelligent happening, moving around in the background here.
And I would associate that with higher self, but I don't know.
Right. So what advice would you give to people who think they might be experiencing some of this stuff?
That's hard because it manifests in so many different ways.
Basically, call Seriah, and
I will talk to people about it. I have many times. It's not fighting it is the big thing. Understanding that it's not trying to hurt you, not fighting it. Learn to meditate. It doesn't have to be Kundalini yoga, but particularly breathing exercises help. See a therapist, maybe see what's going on that is causing these blocks. Even if you can't explain to the therapist, hey, my Kundalini's stuck.
You could probably tell that to a Reiki practitioner, though.
You could. And that's another thing, something like Reiki or something like acupuncture may also help.
Yeah. Get
the energy moving and pay attention to what comes into your mind. That's the other thing. When these blocks are activated in any way, the stuff that's activating them will come into your head.
Ah.
I had a girlfriend who had severe abuse as a child. And she knew some of it, but she didn't know all of it. Some of it was blocked out. She had massive Kundalini. And hers clicked with mine unbelievably well. And one of the things that happened, one of the first times she had really bad Kundalini where it almost rendered her unconscious when she had moved here. And I put my hand down on that chakra and immediately started picking up that abuse, which was not fun, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's like that information was just there. And I'm like, I can't tell her what I'm picking up. That's not something you tell somebody.
Yeah.
That's something they have to deal with on their own.
They have to remember it themselves, yeah.
Right. And I was like, I can't tell them. But our energy was so connected that when that stuff eventually did come out, she did not handle it well. And her energy was just all over the place. And one of the things she would do is she would press her forehead against my sternum, the bottom of my sternum, and she would start pulling energy out of me. And at first, this wasn't a big deal, but the worse her energy got, like it made her feel better to do this, so I generally let her do it. But it got to the point where it almost felt like it was draining me because she was pulling so much energy out of me. And I actually have a physical lump on the bone there that was not there before she did it.
Whoa.
Like it literally changed the bottom of my sternum, so there's just this little lump of bone.
That's almost vampiric, like a...
Sort of, yeah.
Wow.
But, that's one of those things where I was at the doctor's one said, yeah, you feel that lump there? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, what do you think that is? And she's like, well, that's just, the way the bone on your sternum is. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't there before. And she's like, oh, no, it probably was. You probably just didn't notice. Something like that doesn't just form. And I'm like, okay, just checking.
Well, at least you didn't say, well, that's clearly vampires.
Right, yeah. But I mean, it's like that's where this stuff gets into literally changing physical reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's clear from the stories you've told here and the information you've been saying that physical stuff taking place, even from this, from this subtle energy that we don't know how to detect, is part of it. Whether it's physiological in the body, like you said, you experience this pulsing, but when somebody else next to you is like, yeah, you're, the whole freaking bed's shaking, right?
I don't know if it's ever shake the entire bed, but they can definitely feel it coming.
Okay, so they feel like some kind of pulsation coming from you, but it's maybe not vibrating the bed or whatever.
Right.
But still, there's something happening there, right? And yeah, you've got physiological changes and possible changes in environment. So, I mean, affecting electronics is a physical change in the physical world. Probably what happened to your phone. I would not give you a warranty on any electronics.
Phones don't generally have a problem with them for some reason. I am really surprised since the thing is always in my pocket.
And the electronics in them are incredibly delicate.
Right, but there's something about the way they work that they're not affected the same way. Like newer computers aren't affected the same way as older computers were.
That's right.
That particular girlfriend, that was the first time we had a laptop, and like if I picked up and gave her the laptop or vice versa, the laptop crashed. Like every single time.
Yeah. Yep.
So it got to the point where we just shut it down, handed it to the other person, let them turn it back on.
What a pain.
Yeah.
And with hers too, she because it was so intense, probably because of the trauma, like if we were driving along, especially, and this happened especially with foreign cars. At the time we had a Volkswagen. If she started getting upset, like we started to get into a fight, and she would start to get upset, the car would quit.
Oh man, that would be really bad if you guys played video games together. It's like, no, I'm not handing you the controller.
Yeah.
Well, it happened once in like really like 0-degree temperatures coming back from the radio show one morning.
Uh-oh.
And like I don't know, it was like we didn't tend to fight a lot. Like if we did, it only lasted a few seconds, and one of us would be like, "Why are we fighting?"
Yeah.
But we spent a lot of time together, so occasionally fights happened, and like. I don't know, I said something and she started to get upset and then the car quit and she just puts her head down and she goes, "I'm sorry." And the funny thing is no one could ever find anything wrong with the car. So it would get it towed to my mechanic. My mechanic would look it over. There would be nothing wrong with it, but it wouldn't start. And then after like 2 or 3 days, it would just start again.
Wow.
Maybe it was the Carbellini.
She was at the job she was working at one point, she would get, anytime she got really stressed out, not only would her computer crash, but at one point the wires above her where she was sitting melted.
Okay, yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, and it was completely uncontrolled. She had no ability to stop it or anything else.
That reminds me, do you remember this story? This happened some years ago, but there was, for a while, this kind of went around on the paranormal internet. I don't know what you would call it, but there was the story of the little girl who kept starting electrical fires in their apartment.
I don't remember that.
Huh?
I don't remember that.
Okay, yeah. I saw multiple references to it, and her family kept having to move because their apartment would basically burn because, like, in her room or whatever, the wires in the walls would start burning the walls, and they multiple times it happened, and they were people were like, it's arson or there's something wrong with her, but it was. Now I'm wondering, like, I wonder if she was having Kundalini stuff.
That could be.
She was a pretty young, though, very young girl.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know that it has. Yeah, I don't know if it has an age limit to it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or if it could transfer from, like mother to daughter type of thing.
Yeah.
I would think with the way this stuff moves, if someone has active Kundalini while they're pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
The child may be born with some level of active Kundalini.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, it does connect to like the sexual instinct too. So I would think most people don't have it awaken until puberty.
Is that because it's connected to the chakras, or?
I don't know,
okay.
But there is some sexual aspect to it. It can completely hyper activate your sex drive, or it can completely kill it. But it also is a big factor in sex. That's the other thing. Like, that energy is hyper intense in anything like that. Like, way more so than just being around someone or working with someone's energy. Which is a whole lot of stuff I'm not going to go into detail about.
Right. That's
but the sexual aspects of it are very, very intense if you're dealing with two people with awakened Kundalini.
That's making me think of the what is it, Russ? The god. I'm thinking Greek. They have I just totally drew a blank on this idea that I'm trying to explain. There's like the women up in the temple or something, and they have, they can give
the priestess of Apollo.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if that's connected to what because like apparently they would have sex with the people or whatever, and they would have all these crazy visions or something like that.
For the hell of it, I just Googled Kundalini sex, and the first thing that comes up is a YouTube video that says how Kundalini energy changes sex forever. And someone asking on Quora, what happens if an awakened Kundalini man has sex with his wife or some person who is non-awakened?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like they have any good answers.
That seems to be the norm with this topic.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, if you look online for spontaneous Kundalini, I'm one of the things that comes up.
Right, of course, you're like the primary source now in the West, right?
and it's not like I'm the only person that's had this happen or even knows that it has had it happen. It's just that people don't talk about it in the West.
Right.
It was so hard for me to do that first show on this. I mean, so I can understand why people don't talk about it.
And it was hard because you were worried that people were going to think you were crazy, or?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I always try to be very grounded with this stuff. And even with the Kundalini stuff, I try to be very grounded. But I'm basically talking about things that sound insane.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you as a listener at the time, that show was awesome, and I didn't have any problem with it. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, well, you're interested in this stuff.
That's true. That's true. But who's going to be listening to the Where Did the Road Go if they're not, right?
Well, that's true. That's true.
Your audience comes to you, so.
Someone who thought it was a show about cars? I don't know. Off-roading?
Man, that'd be a great name for an off-roading show. Where Did the Road Go? But yeah,
right.
I was just thinking, I mean, I have questions, but I don't know. Like, I was thinking, is there any way to associate various Kundalini phenomena with various chakras, or is it kind of too complex for that?
Well, like I said, when that particular girlfriend leaned her forehead against the solar plexus chakra, that chakra in particular is what gives out energy. When you have an out-of-body experience, if you see that silver cord, it's connected to the solar plexus chakra. So she was instinctively, she was putting her head against the chakra that would be most likely to give out energy.
Okay. But yeah, what I'm thinking of is like, if somebody's having a, what is it called? Morbid Kundalini awakening?
Yeah, morbid. That term I found at some point. I've never found it again. But yeah, morbid Kundalini awakening in that it awakens in a bad way.
Yeah, and it's spontaneous and yeah. So like, is there like a short list of like, of things you could describe? Like if you're having this happen to you, you got a blockage in this chakra, or is that more?
No, not really.
Okay.
No. Like I said, I don't know, because the blockage in my chakra seemed to be at the base chakra, but then I'd hear the hallucinatory sounds and see things. So
stuff associated with the farther up chakras, farther up.
Right, where you would think would be the third eye chakra or the crown chakra.
Yeah.
It's more that if it stops and hurts at a certain point, you can potentially get some idea of what the nature of what it is.
Okay.
Like potentially someone who's been, hurt a lot in, say, relationships or something like that might have problems around their heart chakra. Because oddly, it does actually correspond. You can find, good and bad versions of what the chakras mean online.
Yeah.
I would go for more of the Eastern sources than the New Age sources, but some of the New Age sources have it, are just taking it from the Eastern sources too. So
right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you too. Is like, what's the best resource for reading or learning about it?
I don't know, because like I said, the John White book was the one I found, and another one that was called Kundalini and the Chakras, that was put out by Llewellyn Press. That was actually the one that, let me look that up, that I saw the ad for.
Oh yeah.
And that's what, was like, oh my God, this is me. But it's a very New Age presentation, but it gives you a lot of exercises on how to raise Kundalini.
But maybe, so maybe Kundalini yoga would be something people could try if they think they're having a problem with this.
Yeah. I almost, like I said, my problem with that is that with Kundalini yoga, you're trying to awaken it.
Right.
So the goal is to awaken it. And if it's already awake, what's that going to do?
Good point. Yeah. But maybe you could get, getting it under control is not really a thing. So maybe, I don't know, if you could at least.
Well, you can get it under control. That's the thing. I have it mostly under control. It doesn't mean that it doesn't occasionally pop things up on me.
Yeah.
So the book I was talking about, Kundalini and the Chakras, Evolution in This Lifetime, A Practical Guide by Genevieve L. Paulson.
Okay.
And it sells for about $2 on a few websites, so it's very cheap.
Yeah, that's a good resource. And you're writing one. When is that going to be done?
Well, I'm not writing the one on Kundalini. It's just that it has a chapter in Kundalini and a lot of the stuff we just talked about.
Oh, okay.
It's just all the stuff that's happened to me. John White put out his Kundalini Evolution and Enlightenment. He wrote that apparently in 1979. So I remember that one doing me a lot of good just because it showed the different variations of experiences.
Yeah.
But John White didn't actually write anything. It's just him collecting essays on Kundalini.
Oh, okay. Well, I think you ought to write like a how-to guide. How Not to Die from Morbid Kundalini Awakening by Seriah.
Well, I think the first key is understanding what it is.
Yes,
I agree. It's so many people just don't know what it is. They think there's something wrong with them. Doctors can diagnose any number of things. And like I said, it can cause physical ailments. So you're not looking at energy. You just assume, well, the doctor said I had this. The medication seems to help to a degree.
Right.
So I must have this.
Yeah. But if you have one of those things, and also occasionally, you get weird spikes of pain in your back, or strange thoughts come to your head, or you have synchronicities happening all around you, then maybe there's more to your illness than just a regular illness.
Right. But definitely do not just stop taking whatever you're taking for your illness.
Exactly. Right.
because it is a real, like I said, it causes real things. So even though it may mimic it sometimes, other times it's actually causing it.
Yeah.
So whether it caused my diabetes or not, I would have to fix that on a subconscious level, and I just haven't been able to do it.
Right.
I know of someone who had a major Kundalini awakening, and she had, and I almost forgot about this at one point, she had, I guess, an inverted uterus, where the uterus is tipped or upside down or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And at some point in her life, she had tried to get pregnant, and she couldn't because of this. And then later, after all the Kundalini stuff kicked in, she had gone to the doctor for something and said something about her uterus being inverted, and the doctor went, "What?
Hey,
No.
You don't have that."
And she's like, "Yes." And he's like, "No."
Wow. Well, I mean, that's a great story. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was able to have a kid later.
Wow.
So, it dealt with something.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been a lot of very interesting information. Yeah, I think this is great. So I think what we should tell people is Kyle and I are going to go up and hang out with Seriah. We're going to do some science on him.
That's right.
We'll figure this stuff out. Let you guys know.
Yeah. But yeah, I wish I had better advice for people. It's just, my process of it was fighting it for a long time. I literally thought I was under some kind of attack from something.
Yeah.
And I found that other people have felt the same way, like something. And I guess in a way it's something attacking you. It's just you don't realize it's connected to you.
Right. It's an attack when it becomes blocked, right? This is the idea.
Right, but because it would make me feel so bad sometimes, or cause so much pain, or all this, and I'm like, it feels like something's just like psychically attacking me in some way.
Yeah.
And once I realized, oh, it's energy, and so once you get that knowledge that and I've heard other people say to me, oh, it felt like I was under attack, and it's like, yes, I understand that,
Okay. Yeah.
because you don't have the full view of it. You're just responding to what you're feeling, which feels like an attack.
Yeah. It's purely reactive, and that's since you don't have the full picture.
So I'm wondering if there are cases where it may spontaneously awaken somebody, but it doesn't have any blockages. So then it just
possibly
goes through, and they're like, oh,
I feel great.
And that could continue to happen for long, maybe.
Yeah. Huh.
And the connection to trauma may be just that too. A lot of times that trauma is the blockage.
Right.
Which is what makes you so aware of it. Like some people also may be unaware that there are chakras that are awakened, but there are no blockages, so it never causes them a problem. They just suddenly feel great and
have lots of energy. And
yeah.
I think most people have subtle blocks regardless. I mean, we all do. We all have subconscious, unconscious stuff that we don't want to deal with, that we haven't processed properly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way around that. That's life.
Yeah.
This just decides, well, we're going to fix that.
Right. We're going to force you to face this problem. Yeah.
We don't care what you think. We're just going to go through this, and you're going to deal with it.
Snakes. You can't trust them.
Yeah.
Hey.
Man. I guess it is appropriate that the snake brothers are the ones talking to me about Kundalini.
Yeah.
We're just coiled up here in the tangent cube of science, trying to figure out how all this works.
Yeah.
And the snake imagery, I'm not sure why it's snake imagery.
Yeah, that's...
Well, I don't know. I just think of electricity, right? The coiled serpent, sort of.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the spinal shape it's associated with the spine, and that's snake-like. But it is interesting, the imagery. When I first was looking at it, like I said, I don't remember where I was seeing this, but I was reading this whole this purposeful Kundalini awakening, and then I was seeing all these images that they were posting about very old drawings and stuff like that, and from old books and everything, and all the snake imagery, and I kept thinking it had something to do with esoteric wisdom. Like I thought the person was trying to become enlightened or something, like the goal.
Well, yeah, it is sort of an enlightenment goal.
Yeah. Like once the snake reaches the crown chakra, then
you're connected to the cosmic intelligence.
Exactly. Yeah. And it seems
that type of thing.
Yes, turns you into a conduit and so on and so forth. Yeah.
But like I say, when I can get energy to people's crown chakra, they generally feel really good, and they feel really relaxed. But they get very spacey, like almost like they're high. They're just like, ooh,
Do that again, bro.
And it works better with some people than others,
Yeah.
But I find that to be a fairly common thing. If I can get the energy to that point, sometimes it takes a while before I can do that.
Yeah.
But it's like the universe connects me to these people. It seems so completely unrandom. That it's like I feel like it's part of the energy itself.
Right. It's definitely there. Well, I mean, energy is. I always think of energy as being polarized. So, it's going to draw things to it or push things away, depending on what the opposing energy is like. So, it makes sense that you would draw towards you or be drawn towards each other if the energy is the right type of polarity.
Yeah, but it also, it's that whole twisting reality around thing.
Yeah. I'm just trying to put it in simplified terms that my brain can understand, Seriah.
It's like with the synchronicities. It's like there's a grand plan there.
Yeah.
And why? Why is there a grand plan there? Why is any of that necessary? Why,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
how much of it...
That can go back to just your higher self again. The grand plan really is your plan.
Yeah, it could be.
And, like you're interacting with these other higher self beings in a different realm, and you guys are kind of interacting through the material realm, through your avatars in the material realm, using these very interesting, they're like, watch what he does when I do this, right?
But it's like reality almost has to be rearranged in a certain way for it to work. So it's like, okay, is this just preordained? Is there, and that goes back to the whole free will concept.
Right.
And how much do we manipulate the reality around us? Does someone say, man, I really need someone to help me with this. I don't know what this is. And then somehow reality is rearranged so they meet me. And then I go, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah. And I mean, this might sound a little, again, simplified, but could it, at least part of it, simply be to get you to ask those kinds of questions?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Because that's what draws you along the path. Why are you seeking in the first place?
Yeah.
Because these things happen to you, right? And you notice them, and here you are asking these questions.
And how are they connected to everything else? Is this just a supercharger to the normal stuff that other people have who don't have Kundalini? Like, am I not particular? I hate using the term psychic, but just for argument's sake, am I not particularly psychic, but the Kundalini makes me so?
Right. Or is it that you like this idea that it's supposed to connect you to something higher? That has happened. So it is not necessarily that you are psychic, but there is a connection that has been made that is feeding you information. Because I get the idea that you're sort of hesitant to call yourself psychic, right?
Yes, very much so.
And I totally understand that, but it isn't. I mean, maybe people would call this being psychic, but you're connected to something for whatever reason.
Well, the analogy I always use is that I'm sitting in the passenger side of a car driving along a road neither of us have been on, and off in the weeds I see a sign that says rest area 2 miles. And the driver doesn't see it. And I go, hey, there's a rest area in 2 miles. And they go, you have no way of knowing that. And I'll be like, but there was a sign. There was no sign. Yeah, but there was. And then we get to the rest area and they're going, how did you know? And I'm like, there was a freaking sign.
Yeah.
It's just you weren't looking that way.
See, this is a car show. I knew it. Another sort of analogy is, a computer that's not connected to the network doesn't have all that data that's out there. But once the connection's made, all this energy starts to flow and all this information comes in. And then suddenly there's all this data that doesn't exist on the computer, but nevertheless can be accessed through it. So this is another thing that's happening. And, it's like
And someone can hack your computer and put information in there.
Right. Yes, there are bad
Where
things
did that come
swimming
from?
in the internet. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, even not even necessarily in a bad way. Like the way something will pop into my head, someone could hack into a computer and put a message on a screen.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And if it is an entity with its own intelligence, like you said, that, let's say for the sake of argument, is not your higher self, then that's interesting, because what's happening there? What are you dealing with? You know, who is
right?
It? What is it? I guess who is probably the wrong question.
It's the librarian.
Yeah, there you go. it's the eye, bro. You're
And it might be that part of the goal is to integrate this this energy so that it is part of you.
Yep. And
I'm sure someone from an Eastern practice would say that is exactly it, you know.
Yeah. And maybe it chooses people on purpose to do this for, because you have some other purpose, right? It's facilitating something else.
Mm-hmm. And if there's no way, because this is not talked about, because people who have it don't know they have it because they've never heard of it. It makes me wonder if there's like a rise in this stuff, or if it's always been the same number of people who have had this experience but didn't have a context for it.
Yeah.
Or is this waking up in more people, or is it the same as it's always been? We have no way of knowing. Like now people can write me and stuff and talk about this, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people who have these experiences.
Right. Mm. And so then my question, of course, I start thinking about numbers, and I'm like, well, what is it? What are we talking about by population here? You know, how many people per 100,000 does this happen to? And then does that number stay the same? But because the population of the world is constantly growing right now, it's growing massively. So yes, more people, but it's actually the same number of people in the population, percentage wise.
Right.
Like the same thing happened. You can ask the same question about UFO type abductions. Like, has it always been the same sort of, by, the percentage of people that this seems to happen to, and there's just millions of them because there's billions of people.
Right. And if it is connected to something that an ancient culture would call a shamanic awakening, every so many people, maybe one person has that awakened ability.
Right. Exactly.
And that's just how that humans are for whatever reason, and now there's so many people out there, and we're not in that sort of structure anymore, a cultural structure.
Right. But it still happens. And
it still happens. It is just because it becomes a problem.
Yeah. So if it happens to 1 out of every 100,000 people, that's rare. But if you have 8 billion people on the planet, there's going to be a lot of them out there.
And I was also,
go ahead.
I was also thinking that maybe it's like the pipeline goes both ways, right? So if there's a being on the other side of the veil, they're trying to figure out what's going on over here. So they connect to someone, and you're asking yourself, why is this happening to me? And why do these synchronicities are just like, you're searching for the meaning and the purpose, when really they're doing it for themselves. They're trying to get information from here.
Yeah.
So it looks to you like things are being done, but they don't really make sense in the grand scheme of your life, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But it's actually doing a lot for them. You need a wider
perspective.
Yeah, it's doing something for them on the other side. They're getting information, and then sometimes you get some.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The fact that I've met a lot of people since I did that first show with Kundalini isn't surprising, because I put it out there.
Yeah.
People could then hear it and be like, oh, this has happened to me. I had someone tell me that they were with someone who had Kundalini was it their feet? It was a while ago. I think they said they had a Kundalini burst and they actually had flames shooting out of their feet.
Whoa.
So again, that connects into that potential for spontaneous human combustion.
Yeah.
But it also, if poltergeists can create fire too. So if Kundalini creates poltergeists, like which is affecting what to cause this? Right. But
chicken or the egg question.
Yeah, heat and cold, extreme heat or cold in the body is one of those symptoms. But it's the number of people I met before I talked about this publicly that is what is so weird to me. You know, it's like, how did all these people get drawn to me prior to this?
Yeah. Right, because after the show came out, then now you have a reason why they were drawn to you. But previous to that, you're like, well, how is this happening? Yeah.
Like, how do I keep meeting these people and go, let me check something. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. And then, you know, with some people, it's hard to even broach. You're kind of like, so does this happen to you? Yeah. Okay. What about this? And then they get scared. They're like, what's wrong with me? It's like nothing. Yeah, nothing's wrong with you. So
there's this snake in your back.
There was a girl I worked with at one point, and I noticed numerous things that kind of suggested she was having some mild Kundalini experiences. And she had talked to me about a couple things. She's like, I don't know what this is. And I'm like, huh. So I sent her a blog post I had written about it, and it scared the crap out of her. And she's going, I have all these things, like all this stuff right here. This is all, what do I do? And I'm like, no, it's fine. And she's like just panicking. And like, you know, I'm trying to talk to her about it, and she's like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm just going to ignore it, you know? And I'm like, okay.
Bad idea.
Right. Well, the thing is, she then broke up with her boyfriend very soon after that, and all of the symptoms went away. And I went, I'm going to go talk to her boyfriend. And I actually paid a little more attention to him, and I'm going, oh, it was coming from you. Okay. But I wouldn't have noticed it as easily with him unless I was looking for it.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't do anything with that energy, but I picked it up in her.
Right.
And as soon as they broke up, hers just went away. It's like it didn't really awaken hers per se. Like it didn't have enough volume there to wake it up. So as soon as she stopped, you know, being with him, it just went back down.
Yeah, it was induction by proximity, right? And it's sort of like what happens with wires.
Right.
You can induce an electrical current in a wire that's next to another one that has a powerful electrical current running through it if they're not shielded properly.
So, and again, it spreads. So that's part of the electrical element.
Yeah.
And I used to, you know, this is one of the things we mentioned earlier on. I used to really not want to touch people because I never knew what kind of effect I was going to have on them. And it was one of those things where, what were we talking about in relation to that? Was
Tesla.
It someone else you knew?
Tesla.
Yeah. Okay, that's what it was. Yeah. But that was me for a long time. Like I just didn't like touching people because I didn't know what I was going to do to them. Once I got it a little more under control, it was fine. But like it was just so unpredictable that I avoided touching people most of the time.
Did people think you were a germaphobe?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Because that's what they say about Tesla. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he had serious Kundalini.
Yeah.
You know, it's possible. It's a really interesting idea. I wish there was something we knew more about him that we could like focus on. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know, man. There's a lot of interesting diary entries that he wrote about a lot of his
and read his writings. Yeah.
That might be worth researching at some point.
Yeah. And then you can finish his project.
It would be so fitting, right? Yeah. It'd be so fitting if the guy who is like known for this magical control of electricity had active Kundalini. You know, it's like, exactly. That's right.
Mystery solved.
You know, and I think I talked about in that first show having it so powerful one day that I knocked someone across the room with it.
Yeah, I do. Wow. You talked about that.
Yeah, it was. I was visiting a DJ friend of mine, and there was no stress or anything. I was getting shocks from everything that day, and I'm like, "What is going on?" And I had stopped in, and it was a small booth that he was in. I mean, not tiny, but small enough. And he was one of those people that always wanted to shake your hand. And I said, no touching. I'm like, touching is bad. I'm like, no offense, just don't touch me today. And he kind of gave me a weird look, and he's like, okay, you know. And then he went to, you know, I was like facing forward, and he went to walk behind me, and so we were back to back, and he just gently brushed me, and it went off like a gunshot. And I'm like, and I didn't even really feel it. I more heard it. And I turned around, and he's sitting on the floor across the room and just looking at me going, what the hell was that? And I'm like,
told you not to touch me.
It's like, that's why you don't touch me.
Wow.
And And as we were going to leave, we walk out into the hallway, and all the lights in the hallway go off. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. Wow.
But yet the radio station was fine. Of course, I wasn't touching anything. I didn't touch anything in the hallway either. I guess the lights were more sensitive. And then I went to see another friend of mine at a radio station. I thought this was the same night. When I looked through my notes, apparently it was like the next night or whatever. And I get there, and I'm sitting there talking to him, and I'm still getting shocks off of everything. And so for anyone who knows my musical taste, probably knows I hate Metallica. And like their like Binge and Purge CD or something had just come out, and he's like, oh, I got Metallica. And I'm like, yeah, too bad Metallica suck. And like he knew. He was intentionally telling me, sarcastically. And as I said that, I grabbed the metal rack the CD players and stuff were on. And as I grabbed it, I felt just kind of a buzz. And all the power went out. And at the same time, it's when I said, Metallica suck. And I went, okay, Metallica don't suck? What? And it's like, and I'm going, I could not have just knocked the power out in the building. There's no way I just knocked the power out in the building. And so, we got up, we went outside, the entire block is dark, and I'm like, okay, this is just a coincidence.
Right. I didn't knock out the whole block.
And we sat there for a while. The power never came back up. We had a weird, creepy experience with a phone ringing that we didn't even know existed. Because it was, being a radio station, all the phones were on the electrical system. So they were all out, except for one. And we're sitting in the main office, and we're in complete darkness, totally silent. And we just hear this faint ringing.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you hear a phone ringing? And we're looking through all the offices, and in someone's office, under their desk, buried under all this other stuff, is a normal phone.
That's weird.
And he's just like, this is the phone that's ringing. And he's like, and he picked it up, and there was just static. And he's like, he hangs it up. He's like, I think we should just go home now. I think going home is the thing we should do.
Yeah. Well, at least he didn't disappear into Matrix style into the phone.
True.
That is high strangeness.
That right there is a high strangeness story. Yeah.
And I said to him, because he was also the news person for the station, I said, hey, see if you can find out what caused the power outage. And so like the next day he called me. He's like, oh, so they said the power outage came from somewhere down the block where we were, but they couldn't figure out what would have caused enough power to short everything out like that. And I'm just like, it wasn't me.
Yeah. You blew a transformer.
It totally wasn't me. But nothing like that's ever happened again. Like that level of electricity in my body has never even come close. That was like a singular thing.
Yeah.
You blew a coiled serpent, which is a transformer.
Yeah.
I'm serious, man.
You just told the guy, I told you Metallica sucks.
You gotta get some of these electrical components, and just have them sitting around your house. Like get some transformers.
Yeah.
Not big ones, because you might really hurt somebody. But just get some transformers and some capacitors and just have them on your desk, and occasionally just go touch one of the wires on the end and just
charge that.
I think letting Sheryl Lee do that would be better.
Especially if you like near the transformer or whatever, you can put a couple of bolts or something just sitting there, and then you can touch the transformer and see if the bolt flies at it.
And Sheryl Lee was one of the people who contacted me after that show because she had Kundalini from her near-death experiences.
Yeah, and this is why when you guys hang out, weird stuff happens, right?
Oh, we've never hung out.
Oh, okay. That's somebody else.
No, that was Gwen.
Okay, right.
Yeah, Gwendolyn also, but Gwendolyn had some weird experiences. No major trauma though. But yeah, when her and I would hang out, weird things would happen. Even when we weren't hanging out, sometimes just at a distance, weird things would happen.
Yeah.
And Sheryl Lee was part of that at one point, like because she picked up something that Gwendolyn heard. And Sheryl Lee heard because Gwendolyn was going to sleep and heard someone say, I think it was robot circles. Crystal clear. And at the same time, almost, Sheryl Lee and I are doing a show, and Sheryl Lee's like, I just heard robot circles in my headset.
What?
Yeah. We did a show called Robot Circles talking about all this.
Man. Well, we got to hang out with you guys.
Yeah.
And there have been other people who, like, if I hang out with them, yes, that weird stuff will happen. Like, weird stuff doesn't happen to them, but when they're around me, like, the TV will turn itself off.
Yeah.
Weird noises. It's like there's some combination there that's really setting things off.
That's really cool.
Like, Shirley and I have joked that we should probably never be in the same place at the same time because we both have so much strong energy going on.
Yeah.
Totally want to do it, though.
Yeah.
Totally want her to come out live for Where the Road Goes. She's not that far away.
You guys should book a field trip at, like, the power plant or something.
Yeah.
And then the UFOs just show up because they do like power plants.
Yeah.
Everything will suddenly make sense.
Go to Hoover Dam and see if you can shut it down.
That sounds like a really bad idea.
Don't buy an electric car.
And it's weird. It's weird that like I said, I don't affect. I think part of it's that I have my energy somewhat controlled now. So I don't have the bad effects on people if I touch them. I don't generally short things out when I touch them. But it's taken a very long time.
Yeah. And I wonder if you get into a liminal place with your life, if it would pick back up.
My life is always liminal.
Right, but I mean more liminal. If you had to move.
I don't know how much more liminal it can be.
Well, if you had to move or something, like that kind of liminal.
Yeah, I'd prefer not to do that.
I know. I know you're in an old family home. I'm just saying, like, let's see how liminal we can make it and see if you can start turning stuff off,
I think this stuff happens to begin with because my life is so liminal.
Yes, it is. I agree. You have a certain heightened amount of liminality in your life, but there's no way that we definitely could increase it for science.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Seriah doesn't want to be a guinea pig, folks. Sad.
I don't mind some things. Just depends what it is.
Yeah.
So does anything else come to mind for you guys?
I mean, there's tons of questions, but I think this has been a fantastic show. I got to chew on some of this. Maybe we can do a part 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do a part 2.
Yeah, I definitely want to look into it because I'm curious about myself and Russ. Like you're describing all these things, and I'm like, Russ has had some of that.
Some of this sounds familiar.
I've had a little bit of that.
Yeah.
That would be cool. I'm going to definitely look into it.
Yeah, I specifically tried not to do any reading, even though I have read about it in the past for this show. But maybe for part 2, Kyle and I can do a little looking into it and then come back and have deeper questions.
And there's probably really important stuff that is just not come up that I'm not thinking about.
Right.
I've been dealing with this so long that like I just literally forget things. I'll be like, oh yeah, it's a Kundalini thing. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say for part 2, maybe let's see if you can work up, some more advice for people. Like, can you recognize certain things? Because that would be really helpful, I think. Because that's
yeah. Well, like I said, the problem is because it's so unique to each person. There's no like, oh, this is definitely Kundalini.
Yeah. Right. But surely there's some kind of markers we can,
I don't
generalities. Maybe not. Yeah.
I mean, there are symptoms.
Yeah.
But the problem with the symptoms is the symptoms can also be other stuff. It's kind of like COVID.
Yeah.
Flagged.
Flagged. It's going to be banned.
But seriously, I mean, because you can get those like sudden emotional states that make no sense, but there's other reasons you could get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feeling really hot or feeling really cold. I mean, even if it feels like it's coming from internal, again, there's other things that can cause that.
Right.
It's almost like you have to cluster all these things together and try to adjust it.
Right.
To see if it actually adjusts.
Right.
And that can be hard. That takes meditation, and for me, and especially breathing exercises are the big thing.
Yeah. But if you've killed the power for an entire block because Metallica sucks,
I still don't actually believe I did that.
I'm totally buying it.
Yeah.
It's just that the correlation of me grabbing that metal rack and feeling like a little jolt, and it wasn't a big jolt. It wasn't like, ow. It was just like a little vibration. And after that, all of that electrical stuff stopped.
Yeah.
like that extreme electrical stuff. It went back to normal electrical stuff. It's almost like whatever it was discharged through the CD rack into the electrical system and just blew everything out. And then it was like, all right, now I'm good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if it makes you feel any better, that transformer that was running that block is probably a little bit old.
It was probably old.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Probably had some CO2 building up in the oil.
Yeah, oil wasn't up to spec anymore.
You just touched that rack and just gave it the last bit and just, took it out.
It was like, oh God, a Kundalini guy grabbed onto the grid. I'm going down. I can't handle this power surge. Game over.
But hang on, I'm going to make this phone ring.
Right. Yeah, that part is the part that makes it like, now we know it was you. Something was calling you like
yes, that's right. That's right.
that part was just incredibly creepy.
Yeah, I can imagine. You're like, why is this phone even here?
Right.
How is it ringing? What is going on, and why is it just static?
And because it was buried, like I said, buried under someone's desk. It's not like a phone they were using. Yeah. So why is it there, plugged in under the desk? But it was so quiet, and we would not have heard it if the whole place wasn't dead quiet and dark, it's like, it's dark in here. It's really quiet. Why is there a phone ringing
somewhere in the And the guy told you it was static, but he probably picked it up and it was like, "Let me speak to Seriah." And he's like, "No, it was just static." I don't remember if he held it out to me or not. Like that part I don't remember. So I might have heard it. I don't know. I feel like I might have heard the static too, but I don't remember clearly enough. I mean, this was like 1992, 93, somewhere in there. Yeah. What a great story, though. Wow. Even without the Kundalini, it's still a great story. Power goes out, weird phone ringing in the dark.
Exactly. It's like the way to make things creepy.
Yeah.
And like I said, at that point, he's like, we should go. I think we're done here.
I get it was the 90s calling. They wanted their power back.
That was a great
lame joke.
Yeah. Lame joke. Great show.
So we'll continue this at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
And if people are experiencing this type of stuff and they do want to talk to me, they can contact me at contact@wheredidtheroadgo.com. I try to answer everyone. If I don't answer you, write me again after a week or so.
Yep.
Good policy.
Good policy.
Because I'm not going to be bothered. I mean, if someone wrote me every day, I might be bothered. But I mean, like, if I don't answer in a day or so, it means I forgot about it. Like, I read it and went, oh, I should answer this, and then got distracted, and then it was out of mind.
Right.
And
or now your computer shut down.
My computer doesn't crash very much.
That's good.
That's good, yeah.
So, like I said, I don't know if it's just that the newer stuff is more tolerant to this type of energy. But, I used to crash computers constantly, and now I don't.
Yeah, so either you're more in control or it's more tolerant or both or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it might be more tolerant. I mean, so many of these things have like built-in like surge suppressors and stuff like that to better manage the electrical voltage on the board and everything. I remember when I worked at Best Buy, walking into the back room, and the woman who was running the computer in the back room suddenly went, "What the hell? The computer just went crazy." And I went,
"Sorry,
probably me. I'm gonna go." And I left. And later she came out and she goes, "Don't come into the back room again." And I'm like, "Did it start working when I left?" And she's like, "Yes."
Wow, she bought it. That's great.
I worked at a record store, and every time I tried to, like every once in a while, I would go to scan something. And I think scanners were fairly new at the time. But it was like the handheld thing. You'd scan the barcode. And usually it worked. But every once in a while, I would just get gibberish across the screen. And I'd go, oh, good. I can't check this person out. And I remember going to one of my managers, who was kind of a jerk, actually. And I said to him, I'm like, I can't check this person out. And he's like, what do you mean you can't check them out? I'm like, it's not going to work for me. And he's just like, well, what does that mean? And I scan it, and gibberish goes across the screen, and he goes, so there's something wrong with it? I'm like, no, it's me. Go ahead and scan it. And he scanned it, and it worked. And he's like, well, what? Why is that happening? And I'm like, I'm just going to go do something else. You check people out.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story about snakes.
I'd like to take a moment to thank all of my Patreons. You're the ones who make this show possible. An extra special shout out to those of you pledging $10 or more. Allison Cook, Lindsay Trebet, Super Inframan, Tim, David Moore, Vincent Trewell, The Great Change, Stone Wilderness, Luke Osborne, Rob Drummond, Alex Whitcomb, Damian Tallman, Edu Camahort, Tactical Therapist, Janet Bunderson, 36 Dingo, Maria, Sam Sheeran, Jennifer Campbell, American Rambler, Kevin, John Rutledge Foster, Eric Citron, Andy McNamara, Matthias Sumby, Dominic O'Malley, Christopher Vaughn, Riker and Stark, Sean Cosgrove, Jose A., Roger Gonzalez, Craig Cicernos, Ray Benedetto, Linz Jackson K., Alfred Tuttle, Matthew Sproul, Kevin Schreck, Patricia Giaquinta, William Lovelace, Mark Brady, Chris 646, Carla Mahoney, and James Lattimore. Thank you all so very much. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.